Hello everyone. Okay, first of all, what the fuck was this movie? Time felt really weird watching this movie. It felt so long, but so much happened in like the first half an hour. This movie felt more like a montage than an actual film. It just had scene after scene after scene after scene. Before I get straight into it, like the actual movie, which I'm not doing right now, obviously, I'm giving you all a heads up on how bad this movie is. Every leak that was on Reddit and online and circulating Twitter or everywhere happened. And if you thought they were bad, they're so much worse in actual practice. In theory, they are bad. In practice, they are 1,000 times worse. The opening crawl already made me want to tear my hair out. It starts with the dead speak. Palpatine is sending out broadcasts to the galaxy. I only learned this after the movie, that the actual broadcast wasn't even in the movie. No, instead, it was in Fortnite. So, to properly get the lore of Star Wars and understand this movie, you would have had to play Fortnite. What the fuck? Which is the dumbest fucking thing ever. This entire moronic idea to announce your existence to your enemies is the only reason anyone was able to find Palpatine, and the whole reason he died at the end of the movie. If he had just shut up and chilled there on his little planet for like 16 hours, then attacked out of nowhere instead of announcing himself, no one would have even remotely stood a chance. For fuck's sake, he has an entire army at the ready to overtake the galaxy. And he tells everyone about it so that they can come and stop him before he gets to launch his attack. What the fuck? This is not a tactic from the man who plotted for decades to overthrow the Republic. What a fucking moron. Oh, yeah, anyone who is ever smart in Star Wars is now an utter moron in this film, unless they were an utter moron before. Now they're a genius who is an utter moron half the time. Basically, people's character and their intelligence levels jump around however the fuck the plot feels like it. The movie starts out good-ish at a first glance. We start with Kyle. Yes, I'm calling him Kyle for now, because my computer decided, no, every time you type in Kyle, we're going to change it to Kylo. Or I typed in, fuck, you know what I meant. Whatever. Because my computer hated me. Anyway, he starts off being decently interesting. He's in a forest. He's slaughtering people to get to one of the two MacGuffins that exist in this movie. One MacGuffin is his. The other MacGuffin is Rey's. Well, technically there's three, but that's not the point. And I'm trying so hard to appreciate him being evil, and I do like it, but his fighting style is just, what the fuck are you doing? He backhands people away from him using his lightsaber. He doesn't cut people in half somehow. He only like cuts them in the middle of their chest and not all the way through, because, you know, the spine can somehow stop a lightsaber. And someone pointed out to me that he moonwalks into stabbing someone while he's fighting them. And when I watched the clip on YouTube or online or whatever, yes, he does exactly that. He moonwalks away from one enemy into stabbing someone else in the chest. Who the fuck trained him? Palpatine didn't, and I didn't know Michael Jackson was a Sith Lord teaching him how to fucking moonwalk. The forest he moonwalks through is apparently on Mustafar, even though I had no idea a lava planet had any trees, or trees could grow there, considering the amount of sulfur that would be in the air from the lava. Nothing in this film actually says it's on Mustafar. Nothing hints that it's on Mustafar. There's no reason to even consider the fact that this planet is Mustafar, besides the fact that it looks hot. And I have no idea who he's even fighting, who he's walking through a forest slaughtering, because the plot doesn't explain it. Now, the leaks say this wayfinder he finds is Vader's, and the other one is Palpatine's hidden on the Death Star. But why would Vader's put his in the middle of a forest in a little stone crate? Shouldn't it be in his castle, or on his old ship, or just, you know, tucked away in a pocket on his suit? If the people he's slaughtering are protecting the Wayfinder, why would they stop Kylo? Why would Vader's minions be anti-Sith? It makes no sense. With Vader having one of these Wayfinders that brings up so many problems, though, too. That means that Vader knew about the secret base, and that all these followers existed, and probably bits of Palpatine's backup plan, and just never told Luke, never said, hey, on his deathbed, Luke, go find a planet surrounded by storm, and then he just dies. But no, he doesn't even have to do that. He's a Force ghost. He could have just came back and said, yo, Luke, hey, buddy, hey, guess what? He's not dead. He's totally just chilling on a planet minus some fingers. You might want to go deal with that. But no, nothing of that happens at all. And worst of all is that Force ghosts could do that too. Force ghost Anakin could go up to Luke and be like, hey, guess what? Hey, Palpatine's still alive. You're a fucking idiot. He's still alive. But no, because now they can shoot lightning whenever they feel like. They can catch lightsabers before they get thrown into fire. I've barely started this review, and I am so off topic of the actual opening scene, because every part of the movie breaks itself upon another part. Luke finding this thing makes no sense, because if Vader had it, then Vader would have told Luke. And Vader not telling Luke doesn't make sense, because Vader could have told Luke as a Force ghost, because Force ghosts can interact with the animate world because of this movie and The Last Jedi. Ugh. I hate this movie so much. Anyway, while fun seeing him actually being evil, it doesn't last long, because after seeing the whole movie, I'm left wondering how the fuck did he know there would be a Sith holocron there that would lead him to Palpatine? He found it so easily, while Rey had a whole video game plot to find hers. Actually, bigger question, why do these maps even exist? Does J.J. Abrams have a thing for maps that shouldn't exist? Really? Luke's map in The Force Awakens shouldn't have existed because he was trying to die in peace, and Palpatine shouldn't have existed because he's in hiding preparing an army to take over the galaxy again. I'm pretty sure the dagger Rey uses to find the other holocron is an actual weapon, too. So, if I was Palpatine trying to stay hidden, what I'd really want to do is definitely leave a map to my location on my assassin's weapons. They already know where you are to get their mission. They know you're alive. They don't need a map 24/7 on how to get to you. What the fuck? Oh, there's also a MacGuffin for the MacGuffin so that Rey can reach her main MacGuffin. I'm trying so hard to be chronological about this movie. But like I said, every plot hole, every inconsistency is built around the past consistencies. And yes, I said around really stupidly. Not only that, but the magical dagger Rey uses to find the MacGuffin later on ends up being a perfect fit for a piece of a broken Death Star that shouldn't exist to begin with. A perfect fit if you stand in that one specific spot. How does the Wayfinder even work? Yes, I'm getting off topic, but you're going to have to deal with that for now. I'll get back onto the actual plot of the moronic movie in a minute. At one point, Kylo Ren needs the Wayfinder to get to Palpatine, and it acts as an almost navigation tool as he swerves through the nebula-looking thing. But when Rey goes to Palpatine, she just flies there with it, and then broadcasts the location of the planet to the Rebellion. So, what was the Wayfinder for? How does it work? At the end of the movie, Kylo Ren follows Rey there with no Wayfinder, only a ship. If you're going to have a MacGuffin in your film, maybe don't make it be the MacGuffin to end all MacGuffins. When the Resistance, and I'll touch more on the stupidity of the Wayfinders later, I'm just trying to stay somewhat chronologically. When the Resistance later on goes to the Storm Planet, the storm cloud in space is moving. So even if they followed Rey's path, wouldn't they still crash into something? Into the electric storm that's in space? Space doesn't normally stand still. Ugh. They can't even space right. Bigger question is, if this storm is so dangerous, how did the Sith ever leave? How did they get there? There's no resources on that planet. It's just a rock surrounded by lightning. More important question is, did they hire people to bring in resources? Because there's nothing there. Did Palpatine hire people to build his infinity army? Did they hire people to bring the resources? Where did they all get it from? Like, how did word not get out that, hey man, there's some zombie-looking Sith building an army? Fuck me, this movie is a shit show. How did the Sith or anyone get to this planet? How do you exist on this planet? What do the thousands of slaves that Palpatine has eat? Do they order space takeout from other planets? Because this planet is a rock with nothing on it. There's no vegetation at all. There's like a dead tree, I think. That's like a husk of slowly disintegrating when Kylo lands on the planet, I think. Someone has to know this army exists and what is happening. Even just the supplies needed to build an army. Assuming they used magic to not need to eat. Okay, let's assume the Force is now a new MacGuffin, and all of Palpatine's followers can use it to a degree, and that's how they're still alive after all this time. You still need resources to build your army. There's nothing on this planet. Ugh. This movie falls apart so fucking fast if you just ask how something happens or why something happens. There's no infrastructure on this planet. There's nothing to build this fleet larger than a fleet ever built before, let alone somehow having all these people survive on the planet, covered in gravity wells and random explosions of lightning everywhere. The original Empire had the whole galaxy, and they didn't have an army this big. So how the hell did Palpatine amass a force this big with bloody Death Star laser cannons attached to every one of the Star Destroyers? It's so large and unrealistic that asking how he did that blows the movie apart. It's not even that hard of a question to think of. A 10-year-old could be watching this movie, and 10-year-olds like to go, how'd that happen? Why? 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 So all they do is, where'd those come from? And then, how'd he build them? And you'd sit there and go, it's just the Force. Also, I hate everything. Also, if this storm planet is the secret Sith planet, what happened to Korriban? Is that not the original homeworld of the Sith, with tombs and secrets everywhere, that was in Knights of the Old Republic? And I'm pretty sure it made debut in the Clone Wars at some point, or maybe that was Dathomir. But that's... what happened to Korriban? Is that not the... like... isn't it canonically known as the Sith homeworld and not the Stormy Lightning Rock? Kylo then goes to the Planet of Storms that I can't remember the name of, but I watched the movie once, I got the plot, and I understood the whole movie, but it still made no sense. I don't remember the names of any of the planets, except for the fact that one of them is supposed to be Mustafar, and I think the snow planet that's not Hoth is supposed to be Kojima. But that's all I remember for the planets' names. But to find Palpatine, he flies through the space storm to get through to the planet. But guess what's surrounding the space storm that leads to the planet in space? Nothing. There is nothing surrounding the space storm to get to the planet. It is empty space. You could fly around the space storm and just go around it. Do people not understand that space is not a road? You can go anywhere. You can go up, down, left, right. There's 3 dimensions. Ugh. Like, if you want to have a space storm surrounding a planet, maybe have a throwaway line that the whole planet is surrounded by it. That's all you need. Be like, hey, space storm is around the whole planet. To navigate through this, you need this thing which can predict it. That would explain both the MacGuffin and the stupid space storm. That makes no sense. Or that you could even just say the Sith hit it, so you can only get to it by going through the storm, and you need the MacGuffin to do it. But no. Nothing like that mentioned, so theoretically, you could just fly around it. The whole plot of the movie gone. Just fly around the storm. Oh, look, 1,000,000 Star Destroyers and a little castle with an old dude in it. Problem solved. You don't need the stupid Wayfinder. Palpatine then... Okay, when Kylo Ren gets to his little castle, not his castle, when he gets to Palpatine's castle, he walks right in, and then Palpatine does his weird voice thing to change to the past Sith, where he's like Maul, he's Snoke, he's Vader. I don't remember who was ever Dooku, but I don't think so. Which, not gonna lie, I liked this bit. It was kind of cool, it was neat, it was kind of terrifying. They got the whole supervillain vibe going on. It was cool until you think about it again. It should have shattered Kylo Ren's entire worldview. The whole reason he turned to the dark side originally is because he's been hearing Darth Vader in his head, or Snoke in his head. Knowing that this was a lie the whole time should have broken Kylo Ren's whole mindset and how he sees things. Basically, any scene with Palpatine I liked and had no problem with in isolation. I say isolation because Ian McDiarmid is amazing as Palpatine, but even as cool as him doing the voice change thing is, and his acting, and how terrifying he looks as a zombie, how the fuck does he have all the Sith in his body? Because that's what's implied and said many times. I am all the Sith. He says this many times throughout the movie. First of all, Maul wouldn't help his sorry ass. Maul hates him, and even if he got him inside his body as a Sith spirit to help reinforce his power, Maul would be constantly fighting for his way out and to try and kill him, because Maul hates his ass. And Vader turned good, and is a Jedi Force ghost, so you don't have Vader inside of you either, even though that sounds so wrong when I say that out loud. Snoke died, and you created him, so how is he anything? Is he a clone of someone? Is he your clone? That doesn't make sense either. If so, Anakin, his son... Okay. Does this mean he created life if he created Snoke, like he mentions in Revenge of the Sith? If so, Anakin... Okay, going with that theory that he created Snoke, meaning he created life, he created Anakin. Because the whole theory of Episode 3. If so, Anakin is technically his son, and Ben Solo and Rey Palpatine are cousins, or aunts, or something. Either way, that's some Game of Thrones level bullshit, incest going on. When Kylo Ren asks Palpatine how he's alive, instead of explaining things, or being like, you know, cool about it, he references Episode 3, when he says,
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Which explains nothing about how he's alive, and how he's in this video game boss level. Yes, the planet looks cool, and they use every trick possible to make the planet look as scary as possible. It's completely impossible to live there, though, but somehow thousands of people still live there and worship Palpatine. Saying,
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Explains nothing. It's such a cop-out. The Death Star exploded in Episode 6 to nothing. There was literally not a hunk of it left in Episode 6 that you can see flying. There's no ship flying around. There's no deleted scene of Palpatine showing up on this planet and going, prepare the 6,000,000 Star Destroyers equipped with Death Star cannons that can blow up the galaxy if I shoot them all at once. No, because that would be stupid. Because this is so out of proportion that it's idiotic. There's no way you should be alive at all. Ugh. Kylo Ren then says he killed Snoke and he could kill Palpatine too, and honestly, this movie makes no sense. I'm pretty sure he could, just because plot. Palpatine then breaks all the plot and the whole Disney trilogy by saying he created Snoke. Again, I have so many questions. Did he train Snoke? Is Snoke a clone? Why didn't Snoke take Kyle to Palpatine so he could take over his body like he wanted to do Rey? Why did he even have Snoke do anything when Palpatine could have chilled on this planet and waited? If he's behind the First Order, what was the point of it? What's the point of having the First Order cause some little bit of chaos over here while you amass a fleet big enough to wipe out the galaxy? Wouldn't it have been better just use those extra resources so you could have been done your fleet and anything you needed like 2 years ago or years ago? I'm probably going to make a whole nother video just to try and explain the idiocy of Palpatine's plan and how little sense it makes. But why even have Snoke do anything? Palpatine even has extra clones of Snoke in test tubes that are just floating there like severed heads. They're not severed heads. They're floating there like severed heads. Why? What is he doing with them? Do they have any purpose? Are they still alive? Are they conscious beings? Are they all automatically evil? If you've thawed one out, showed them to Rey, and he was like, "Help me, I'm old and frail," would Rey teach him to be a Jedi? Is he automatically evil? Nothing is explained. Why? Snoke was powerful as shit. Why not just mass produce an army of those? If you can create them all. You have like 3 there in a test tube. You had 1 already controlling the galaxy, is what's apparently. Couldn't he just send out a new one whenever one dies? Like, oh look, another one died. Send another. Oh look, he died too. Let's just keep sending out another and another and another. Rey will keep killing them, but who gives a fuck? Wouldn't Kylo killing Snoke kind of ruin whatever plan Palpatine had for Snoke? With the Snoke clones, if he had a plan for Snoke, wouldn't Kylo Ren murdering him ruin his whole plan? With the Snoke clones, why not just clone himself? He could have just... There could be Palpatine clones running around. Snoke could be a Palpatine clone. It's not explained unless you get some stupid visual dictionary, which I'm not buying, and I'm not reading, because I don't care that much. If the movie leaves this many plot holes about, I'm not reading a book to explain all the plot holes. It's not happening. Oh, and another thing, if you think about Palpatine still being alive, is that balance was never achieved because there's 1,000 Sith on this planet with Palpatine. I don't care if they're Sith followers or actual Force-wielding Sith. They worship the dark side. Now there's only one Jedi, who's Rey at the very end of this trilogy, and I don't even know if these thousands of people are even still alive or not. Rey could have murdered them all when she dropped the base on their heads. But why even have Starkiller Base at all? If you have a fleet in the making that can wipe out planets with ease. If Snoke works for Palpatine, why make Starkiller Base? Why not just send a Star Destroyer to planet? Boom, there goes the planet. Boom, there goes another planet. Starkiller Base is a giant waste of investment. It's a giant planet killer the size of a planet that needs a star to power it. Or you can just get a Star Destroyer to fly out by a planet, blow it up, and fly away. All while having TIE fighters, full crews, and not take the planet-size weapon. It has no purpose. Starkiller Base is useless in comparison. The First Order is useless in comparison and is now just one giant plot hole. One line saying he made Snoke destroys any plot of the last 2 movies making any sense. I know, they probably made little sense already, but just asking, why did you have Snoke do anything, blows them apart, because it makes no sense from the dude who spent decades planning to overtake the Republic, winning, doing it, having the Republic in his control for more decades, and then losing it. And this is his backup plan. And recently, I played Battlefront 2, and his plan was to wipe out the galaxy, and now he wants to... I don't even know. Does he want to control the galaxy? Does he want to blow it up? It's never really explained if he wants to take over the galaxy, or if he wants to blow up the galaxy. Everything, like, you'll just confuse the audience if you go up to Palpatine and just ask him why. Literally, if you stop this movie and just ask why something happens, you'll be left so clueless, it's unbelievable. We don't get a single reason behind Palpatine's plan or his motivations. Honestly, I hate villain monologues, but at this point, I would have accepted it as a necessity of this plot for the whole movie to make sense. Palpatine should have answers to the questions, but there's no logical answer in the universe until you realize the whole movie is retconning the last two movies and putting them in new context, which makes the last movies even worse. This movie retroactively affects episodes 7 and 8 and tears their plot and storylines to shreds. If he made Snoke and was alive enough to do that, why didn't he just come back himself after the Empire fell and picked up where episode 6 left off? He could have picked up the pieces of the Empire while it was at its strongest, and then continued to rule the galaxy and wipe out whatever rebellion left. Luke wouldn't have won then. He could have just remained in hiding. He didn't have to sit on a throne on a Death Star and wait for Luke. He could have hunted down a new apprentice. He could have taken over the galaxy immediately after. Fuck the First Order. That makes no sense. All the Empire lost in Episode 6 was the Death Star, and they still ruled most of the galaxy. So why abandon that plan in favor of this? And if you had this already in the works, send over a Star Destroyer. It's not like Luke could find out where it is, because these ships have no navigation anyway. Which is another moronic idea of this movie that makes no sense. But that I will get into later, because I have to go back to the actual plot at some point. Did the First Order exist before Snoke? Yeah, I'm going to keep asking questions about this movie. If it annoys you, if I'm nitpicking, I'm sorry. But it makes no sense. If I ask a question, there's no answer. And if there is an answer, it's not explained by the movie. If it's common sense, well, I think I have enough common sense to figure out what's common sense or not. But let's see. Did the First Order exist before Snoke? How did he take control? Why have the First Order if he needed it? Why not just lead them himself? Palpatine could have. Did he drop Snoke off on a planet and say, alright, have fun, go cause some chaos while I build an army? Like, wouldn't Snoke even just say, hey, couldn't we both just wait over there on your planet until your army is ready before taking over the galaxy? Why do I have to risk my life with a small army and a planet-sized super weapon? Isn't your idea better? Can't we just go with yours? I like it. It keeps me out of danger. Like, what the fuck? All these questions don't even take into account how utterly ridiculous it is that Palpatine is alive at all. And it's never explained how he's alive. If he's alive because clones, why does he still look like a fucking scrotum? Does he still just suck at cloning? Because even the other Snokes in test tube were all disfigured like the original was. I'm gonna try and get back to the actual plot before I slowly kill off my brain cells. God, I'm barely 10 minutes into the actual plot, too, I just realized. He tells Kylo Ren later that if he kills Rey, Kyle can have his massive fleet of, I don't even know how many Star Destroyers, but let's say thousands or millions, because who knows? It's never said. It's just the final order. Because the biggest fleet the galaxy has ever seen, as said multiple times in the movie, so, you know, if you don't understand by the visuals of the thousands that exist, you do now, because they said it's the biggest fleet ever. You know, if you're an idiot and you didn't understand that. So Palpatine has thousands of ships, but each ship has a Death Star power cannon attached to it. I have a question. I know, I have lots, but I have another one. How did Palpatine end up creating these thousands of ships? And an even bigger question is, how did he staff them? I know I already asked this for the resource question, but where did he get all the people? Do they all live on this Stormrock planet? Where'd they all come from? Is this just what happens when, like, someone is off screen for 2 movies, all of a sudden they come back and they're like, I have the largest fleet in the galaxy, and they're all like, oh shit, so we blow it up In the words of Poe,
So we blow that one up.
that's what he says in episode 8 for the whole, they have a tracker, so we blow it up. And they're like, no, Poe, that's not possible. It doesn't work like that. And he's like, oh fuck. Okay. Let's try again. Let's think of an actual plan. And I hate myself so much for this movie. How is Palpatine offering Kylo Ren the throne when Kylo is already the supreme leader of the galaxy? Like, it's never properly explained how much the Empire controls and how much the Rebellion controls, but he's named Supreme Leader. He controls a large portion of the galaxy. Does he really need Palpatine's help to be named Emperor? Then later he offers Rey the throne, but she doesn't take it, so Palpatine decides to take over. Which plan was the original plan? Did he ever have a plan? When Palpatine shows off his fleet to Kylo Ren, he lifts his hand and the fleet rises. At no point when I first watched this movie did I think, oh, he's lifting it with the Force. And then afterwards, I talked about it with someone else, and they're like, no, he lifts the ships up out of the planet with the Force. And I'm like, no, that can't be real. That's so overpowered that I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, what the fuck? Honestly, that's so overpowered to an insane degree that it just breaks Star Wars. No one poses a threat to Palpatine anymore if that's the case. I'm so hopeful that the ships just moved up by themselves with their actual thrusters, but I don't remember Star Destroyers having upward thrusters. If they do, thank God. The movie makes some degree of sense in this 2-second scene. I can't, this movie. I can't. Like, I'm flabbergasted that this movie even got created. How? Multiple people should have watched this movie and went, maybe we should take that scene out and, like, just have the ships lift off so there's no hint about this stupid possibility. It's such a cool visual with no thought put behind it. Not only that, but later his Force lightning takes out an entire fleet of ships of the Rebellions, and it comes to the point where Palpatine could destroy a planet with the Force, pretty much. And the Force is so broken in this movie now that it can do literally anything the plot requires of it. Does no one remember Han Solo in Episode 7 saying,
"That's not how the Force works"?
Like, that is the exact equivalent of this movie. This movie is that quote. That's not how the Force works. That is this entire movie. Sweet ship, of which there are thousands of them, have the capacity to blow up an entire planet. Can you see what's wrong with this? Making things bigger and stronger and bigger and bigger and bigger does not make the plot more interesting. It just means you have no creative ideas. It went Death Star first was cool. Death Star 2.0, okay, you could have thought something better. Starkiller, okay, it's been 40 years. Think of something better. A fleet of ships that can blow up a planet individually. It's like, no, dude, tone it down a bit. Maybe, like, bring Star Wars down a notch. Just, like, maybe not have planets blowing up every scene of the movie. Because that's what really could have happened if Palpatine had just launched his fleet at the beginning of the movie and said, fuck you, Rebellion. That's it. All the galaxy's planets. There's enough ships there to blow up every planet in the entire galaxy, and Palpatine could have just sat in his chair and went, heh. Not only that, but the fleet is indestructible, and there should be no way the Rebellion or Resistance. Nope. Fuck. They're the Resistance. They're the Rebellion. Who gives a shit? They're the same exact thing. The First Order is also the Empire, and so is the stupid Final Order. Palpatine names his massive fleet the Final Order, which... whatever. There's a First Order and a Final Order. There's no 2 or 3 or 4. Might as well just call it the Second. That's just my own preference there. That's not an actual nitpick of the movie. I just hate the fucking name, the Final Order. They also mention that the fleet, their forces increase... Okay, the First Order mentions that with the fleet of Palpatines, their forces increase 10,000-fold. So either the First Order is made up of one ship, and the fleet that they are getting is made up of 10,000, or Palpatine, the fleet Palpatine has amassed is so unbelievably massive to a degree that the rebellion has no chance of even remotely winning. Where did all these resources come from? Let's say they even have two. Palpatine's fleet is then 20,000. 100, it's 1,000,000. That makes... Okay, even if 10,000 is an exaggeration and not a literal term, why would you not use literal terms in a military meeting? And if it was an exaggeration, what the fuck? Even then, that's massive! To say 10,000-fold is insane. That's just... My god! Where did they all come from? Bigger question is, how were the Star Destroyers supposed to get through the space storm when the mini ships of like the TIE fighters and Rey's X-Wing later on in the when Luke's X-Wing later on in the movie can't even get through. It's Luke's X-Wing. It's not Rey's. Rey stole his and Anakin's lightsaber and his X-Wing. Worse than that is the mere fact that every ship has a planet-destroying cannon. Yes, technology develops in movies and during war, but 40 years ago, the power needed to blow up a planet took the size of a small moon, and multiple planets, just like 2 years ago, took the size of a planet. I don't understand how you logically make the jump from there to there to there. That's a massive leap beyond anything. Planet Destroyer tech is now so simple to be made. Thousands can be made on a whim. Like, why does the First Order even need this fleet? We have no idea who even runs the galaxy. Is the First Order in charge of the galaxy, or the Rebellion? There's also the risk of a ship being taken over by the Rebellion and aimed at Palpatine's planet. Even then, when it blows up, his planet could still be alive. Like, it's just... Even if the planet blew up, Palpatine could somehow probably escape, because he escaped the Death Star blowing up. Now that Palpatine came back from the dead once, they can bring him back whenever they want, because there's no saying, like, oh, he disintegrated, but his spirit lived on. Like, no, he can be alive whenever they want. They can bring him back. Because, you know, the Force. The Force, why not? Like, that's the newest MacGuffin of now, apparently. I hate this movie so much. How did this get made? I'm going to ask this question multiple times throughout this video, in case you haven't noticed. Just how? Anyway, he promises Cal that he can have his massive fleet if he kills Rey. Why kill Rey, you ask? It's part of his plan, which I will explain later. That also makes no sense whatsoever. Even when you take a second to think about it, it makes less sense. The more you think about it, the less sense it makes. He then says Rey is not who he thinks she is, and then it cuts to black, and it changes scenes to Rey on some unnamed Force planet. That's another thing. Half the planets we see in this film, they're never actually named what planet it's on. We're just kind of assuming, or we're told once, and that's it. Like, it'd be nice if we got, like, a little title. Normally I don't like this because it's annoying, and you could use it in the actual plot. But you introduce a lot of planets and places in this movie. Like, it's not like you're on Earth. When you see the London Bridge, or New York City skyline, or the Statue of Liberty, you know where you are. In this, you have no idea where you are. A little title crawl that says, like, Mustafar, Jakku, Tatooine, Kojima, Storm, Space Rock. It'd just be nice. It would explain... I might actually remember these planets. We either have to guess otherwise, or remember, and since I can't remember what snow planet is called, or like, okay, I remembered Kojima, and that's, like, and Tatooine, and I think that's the only planets I actually remembered during this movie. We cut to Rey, eventually, it's just floating, with lots of rocks floating around her. She's not just levitating, though. Like, okay, I know some people complain that she's levitating, that's not canon, but, like, whatever. They've done it before in Coder. They had it where if you're meditating and stuff, you can kind of float. But my problem is that she's not really floating a few inches off the ground. She's, like, flying 6 feet in the air. This human being can basically fly at this point, with how easy it is for her to levitate. She repeats over and over again, be with me. be with me, be with me. Which at first, when I saw this movie, makes me think she's trying to force Skype Kylo again, like in The Last Jedi. But nothing happens, so she does a little spin, lands on the ground. By the way, her little backflip spin midair thing she does to land on her feet, it looks so fake, and like she's attached to wires. I have questions again, though, because of this scene. Why is she training? Rey doesn't need it. In past movies, she's all-powerful, but now she needs training. I know they did this so no one can argue that she hasn't had any training, because now she clearly has. They're like, oh, look, we're shoving it in your face now. She's trained. But later on, Poe has a point, though. Why is she even training? She's beaten Kylo twice, amazing at everything. She can fix ships. She's probably the best mechanic they have. She's probably the best pilot they have. She's probably the best shot they have, because they made her all-powerful. Like, even Anakin Skywalker and Luke, they were good, but they had their talents. Anakin was a mechanic. Luke could fix a few things. Anakin was a good lightsaber. He wasn't all that good on diplomacy. Rey, she's fucking good at everything. Luke was a terrible shot, except when he used the Force, and then he was good at it. But like even then, he used a lightsaber. He still wasn't all powerful with it compared to Rey, beating everyone she's gone against with a lightsaber, except for Snoke. But that doesn't count because he doesn't have a lightsaber. Like, go help them win the war. You're just wasting your time on this planet. She's literal perfection in the past 2 movies. Why bother training? Go do something useful. The last movie, you lifted even bigger rocks than the ones you're lifting now, after like 3 days with Luke. If you're not lifting a Star Destroyer right now, I'm saying you declined a bit in your prowess. Then we meet Leia again, and... Okay, before I talk about Leia, I have to say, love Carrie Fisher. She's an amazing actress, and she was an amazing actress and person. But she probably shouldn't have been in this movie. Every line she has seems kind of generic and so obviously cut out of context. It's so jarring, and it pulled me out of the movie many, many times. And she kind of... You can tell she's not there. You can tell. She barely interacts with anyone physically, and when she does, they cut her face from the screen, and they probably have a body double stand in when she hugs people, so they don't, break the universe by having her actually there. She probably has only 10 or so lines in the movie, but they're all so generic, it's annoying. All of her lines are clunky and awkward. They consist of Ben and don't underestimate droids, and I think if you watch The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi, the don't underestimate droids line is actually a deleted scene that you could find. And saying Rey a number of times, it's just... She should have been cut, honestly. They could have started the movie with her funeral or something. Ben could have felt responsible. You could have done it without her. The only thing that changes is Ben doesn't turn good if she's cut, but I'm pretty sure they could have worked around that. It's obvious when you watch these scenes that they based entire scenes around her lines. She had one line saying, "Be optimistic," and you can tell they based a whole scene around that one line, because that one dude who's from Heroes, the TV show Heroes, I can't remember what his actual name is, but he's from that TV show. Sounds very not optimistic. He sounds very pessimistic to Leia, and she's like, "Be optimistic." And that's her one line in that scene, while the 2 other people beside her say like 10 different things. It's very jarring that if she was there, she would have had more. I think it would have been better if she wasn't in the movie at all, just because it kind of took me out of it. It's nice seeing her again, but it was too jarring. It was obviously camera trickery, and I'm not... Like, they did good with what they had. I'm not faulting them. They did good with the resources they had involving Leia. But I think it would have been a better decision to just cut it. Just don't do what they did with Tarkin. Just don't. Rey then runs a little obstacle course with a little remote droid from Episode 4 shooting at her and following her. She does some needless parkour, and at the end of the droid starts hitting her, starts shooting her, and actually hits her. And then she gets annoyed. We then switch to Kylo, messing with Darth Vader's helmet. He's doing something mystical with the Force, because the Force does anything you want now. Like, anything. It literally, the Force does anything. There's no limits to it whatsoever anymore. And Rey's getting angry. She's destroying parts of the Force because she can't catch the droid that shot her. I'm guessing Kylo was using the helmet to mess with Rey and make her angry and tempted to the dark, but that's not stated properly. But I'm pretty sure that's what happened, but she also could have just been getting annoyed. Like, it's a logical assumption as well, is that, you know, the droid's hitting her, she can't hit it back, she's getting annoyed, then she starts getting angry. Like, you don't need the Vader helmet thing here. You could just say, like, you know, show her temptation to anger using this scene instead of, like, the hintedness that Kylo Ren is influencing her. I just think that would be better to, you know, give her a character, because she doesn't have one at all. She ends up picking up a stick, though, and breaking the droid, but only after cutting down trees and accidentally dropping one on BB-8, which is kind of funny to watch, but, you know, that 2-second clip doesn't make up for the entire 2.5 hours of the movie. She then comically tries to push the tree off BB-8 instead of, you know, using the Force to just lift the tree. Anakin's lightsaber is also fixed now. One of a handful of retcons done to fix The Last Jedi, I'm guessing. This and fixing Kylo Ren's helmet are two of probably the largest retcons I noticed. There are more, but those are probably the most noticeable. Oh yeah, I can't remember if this happened before or after the race scene, but we cut to Finn and Poe going to an iceberg in space. It's the best way to describe it. It's an iceberg. It's just kind of floating in space. I'm not really sure how to explain it better than that. They meet an alien who tells them there's a spy in the First Order who sent them a message. R2 downloads the message, and the First Order fly, and they try to kill them. And I really want to criticize the R2 thing, how they download it. Like, first of all, how did the First Order know they were going to be there? And why is R2 the only one that can be used as a fucking post office? These aren't the Death Star plans. It's just a simple message saying Palpatine was alive, and the Emperor has a fleet on a stormy planet, and he will attack in 16 hours. The spy could have yelled this at Finn and relayed the message. It would have been more productive and easier for Finn and Poe. Again, question. Why couldn't they just send this info that contains Palpatine's alive via email or some shit? Hologram communications do exist. Force Skype isn't the only way to talk to people in this universe. Like, they use holograms in this movie. At some point, I'm pretty sure. And if they don't, where'd the technology go? It existed in 1, 2, 3, and don't remember if it appeared. Okay, it did appear in 5, because Leia did her whole little thing. They could have just done that. Why'd they need the whole R2's now a postman who delivers shit for the rebellion? It just... Force Skype isn't the only way to talk to people in this universe, you morons. Then, to escape, Poe does something called hyperspace skipping. This should be impossible. In Episode 4, Han... And yes, I'm using resources to dispute things this movie does. In Episode 4, Han tells Luke that plotting a hyperspace route takes time, or they could crash into something and die. Later in Episode 7, Han tells Finn jumping onto hyperspace in a planet's atmosphere is incredibly dangerous, and Poe does it probably 6 consecutive times. So either Poe is magical and used the Force in this 2-minute scene, or random luckiness of not dying breaks the movie even more. Now, I'm not sure how much this breaks the lore of Star Wars, or if this is even possible to do, but he jumps from hyperspace to somewhere over and over and over again. It's like hyperspace, ooh look, spiky rocks, hyperspace. At one point, I think they landed on Bespin, because there's like clouds and floating dome-looking thing above them. Not sure it's Bespin, because they don't say it, but, you know, I'm pretty sure they just tried to reference different places that they might have been in the past movies, or maybe even in the Rebels TV show, but I'm not sure, and I didn't have the time or effort to care about those 2-second clips enough to research every individual one. I feel like this whole scene shouldn't exist, though. It should be impossible for a human to do, because you have to know exactly where you are in hyperspace and when to drop out. Not to mention that the TIE fighters following them can all follow them through hyperspace. I don't know if this is from episode 8 and they can track hyperspace still or what. That's not explained. Because every other movie they can hyperspace away, and the Empire cannot follow them, except for 8 and this one. So why now? Bigger question is, at the end of the movie, when all the rebellion hyperspace away and there's still hundreds of Star Destroyers, why can't they follow them? This, see what I mean? This just breaks every plot hole that exists in this minuscule scene, breaks the main plot of the movie. I'm assuming the hyperspace tracking is why they're not being able to just hyperspace away and why they have to do hyperspace skipping. But they don't say that. I'm blown away that the tracking thing is now on individual TIE fighters as well, when last we saw it required a whole room bigger than a TIE fighter in a Star Destroyer to track one single ship. Also, the planets they hyperspace to are distinctly different. I wonder how the actual fuck are the planets completely different when hyperspacing. There's nearly instantly they go one to the other to the other to the other within like 10-second time frame. And each planet has a completely different environment and atmosphere. Unless they're jumping galaxies, those planets should be somewhat similar in relation to their environment. And since when do TIE fighters have hyperdrive? No TIE fighters before have ever had hyperdrive until now. That was an Empire thing. No TIE fighter except for Darth Vader's custom one had a hyperdrive, or they'd explode or something along those lines, because this thing was too small to carry a hyperdrive. It would shoot out and then it would explode. It needed armor and stuff that Vader's had. Also, eventually the Empire ships crash into random obstacles during the hyperdrive skipping, because no one can do these jumps except Poe, I guess. Okay, eventually all the TIE fighters end up blowing up, and then they get to Rey's forest planet, where Rey and the entire rebellion are. When they land, the Falcon is literally, and I use literally on the literal sense here, the Falcon is on fire. There's barely a spot of it that's not on fire. Chewie is just fine with this, I guess. He doesn't say anything. Rey, however, sees this and loses her shit at Poe. She now owns the Falcon, is the reason she's upset, I think. It's never stated, but yeah, I'm guessing she owns the Falcon. She has Luke's lightsaber. She owns the Falcon. She is all-powerful. She is literally the original trio combined. She has Luke's force powers. She is like Leia in some regard, that she's a woman, she's a rebellion leader, whatever you want to say. They basically combined Han, Luke, Leia into one person and went, bam, she's the main character. You don't need a trio. And then they're trying to stick a trio in here anyway. Rey, however, loses her shit at this fact, though. I don't get it. It's never stated she owns the Falcon, but she does. I don't understand it, but I'm not arguing with it. She flips out that he destroyed the Falcon and it was on fire, and Poe is pissed she dropped a tree on BB-8. I like how Rey and Finn get all pissy at Poe for doing what he did about the hyperspace skipping, but it's literally the only reason the First Order didn't find them and the entire rebellion, and the whole reason they even have the intel that Palpatine's still alive to begin with. A thank you would have been nice to Poe, you ungrateful shits. Really, woman, your friends are alive. Shut up and be grateful for that. Rey seems to imply that between hyperspace skipping and death, you should have chosen death, so you don't damage the Falcon. What a fucking moron. And the rebellion is having a meeting where it's explained that Palpatine is alive and hiding in the Outer Rim somewhere, but they don't know where. The fact that he's alive and has been cutting the strings the entire time, which they outright say he's been pulling the strings, there are so many things wrong with that fact. It retcons the entire last movies, which I explained previously, into being part of Palpatine's plans. But why? Nothing in the last movies helped Palpatine at all. The First Order is useless. Kylo Ren is useless compared to Palpatine. Was Snoke ever working for Palpatine? Did he betray him? Nothing involving Snoke or Palpatine is ever properly explained. The whole Vader-Palpatine plotline of 4, 5, and 6 doesn't need explaining. It's simple. He's the apprentice. He's the master. He works for him. Snoke, however, I have so many questions because it's never explicitly stated whether he works for him, whether he's an apprentice, he betrayed him, or what happened in that relationship's regard. Palpatine creating Snoke, and this all being part of his plan, is so obviously not true, and makes it so obvious that Lucasfilm and the entire studio had no plan at all for this trilogy. And this film was just trying to do a patch job, a terrible, terrible patch job at repairing it as best they can. Ugh, it's just so bad. Anyway, they mention a planet, and Rey figures out Luke was researching this planet, and had clues and a whole search documented in a book that Rey stole from the temple in Ahch-To before Yoda burned it down. Rey has all Luke's book, and I guess one is one of his diaries or journals of when he was looking into Palpatine. The fact that Luke was looking into this planet, that's the Sith homeworld, makes me wonder why. He knew about Palpatine's assassin, but he didn't actively know Palpatine was alive. It breaks so much. If he knew the planet existed, then he knew Palpatine had assassins. If he knew Palpatine had assassins, he knew Palpatine was alive. If he knew Palpatine was alive, why did he go into hiding? He knew Palpatine would come back, and he just went, fuck it, the galaxy can burn, apparently. Just destroys Luke's character even more. Enter Desert Planet number 3 now. I don't remember what it's called. I can't call it Tatooine 2.0 because that's Jakku. And Tatooine makes an appearance in this film, so I can't call it that either. The group of Finn, Poe, 3PO, Chewie, Rey, and BB-8 go to not Tatooine. All of our heroes are here. Yeah, there are heroes now. You should get used to that. The original trilogy heroes all start together because of the Force, and then they grow to love them all together. And they all team up. That's the original trilogy. These characters, though, are just together because they're the main characters. There's no chemistry between many of them, except for, like, Finn and Rey, and Poe and Rey, and, yeah, Rey and someone else is what makes the chemistry of this movie. There's no other connections, except for, like, Finn and Poe, which is a weird bromance thing going on, which would be nice to see if they had some kind of brotherly relationship thing going on. The villager okay. There's a party, there's a festival thing happening here, and some random villager ends up asking Rey her name, and gives her a fancy village necklace made of beads, and she says Rey. Then, in such an obvious foreshadowing fashion, after knowing the leaks and hearing this, I went, oh fuck no. Please do not do that. Just please, do not foreshadow this. The villager asked her what her family name is, and 3PO, being the dick that he is, translates this and said, she wants to know what your family name is. And Rey goes, it's just Rey. I'm sad now, can you tell? I don't have a family. And I thought we got over this in the last movie, because she found a new family, but apparently not. Immediately after this, Kylo Ren then forcefully Skypes Rey and talks to her about joining him, while everyone moves in slow motion around Rey. Now, I noticed this, and it annoyed me, because I don't know if that's supposed to happen, because that's such a cheap ability they could use to the point they're slowing time in the real world. Or do they look like they're going at super speed in their little Skype bubble? Not only that, but Snoke set up the Skype relationship between the two in Episode 8. What exactly is stopping Palpatine from listening to their Skype calls every time Kylo says that he's going to kill Palpatine? Kylo Ren steals Rey's new necklace and figures out where she is from that. Now, not much happens here, so the First Order then finds them really, really fast, and they get saved by a random villager who, gasp, is Lando Calrissian. He saves them, and explains that he was with Luke looking for someone who had a way to the MacGuffin to find Palpatine's planet. So, from this line, from this line, Luke then knew about Palpatine's hidden planet, and that it was a secret Sith planet, and still went into hiding. Yeah, the Luke Skywalker Jedi Master, in full knowledge of a secret Sith planet, went looking for it, and then went into hiding. Anyway, yeah, make Luke look worse, why don't you? After already murdering his character in the last movie. So this brings up more questions, as if the movie didn't do it enough. The group of friends then steal some speeders and rush to find the MacGuffin dagger that helps them find the other MacGuffin. Because there's a MacGuffin to find the MacGuffin to go to Palpatine, because Palpatine was found by Kylo Ren using another MacGuffin. This is what this movie is. Think about that sentence I just said. That is the plot of the entire film. And it sounds so moronic. The Empire finds them while they're riding away on their speeders. And that's when we get the lovely scene.
Oh, they fly!
Yes, they fucking fly now. They've been flying since before Attack of the Clones. Jetpacks have existed in Star Wars since guaranteed 4,000 years before The Phantom Menace, because KOTOR is kind of canon, but not quite. They had jetpacks then. Morons. Hate this movie. That one line is just so stupid that everyone in that boat, or little speeder thing, has seen jetpacks. Finn should have seen jetpacks because he was part of the First Order. 3PO has seen jetpacks. R2 has seen jetpacks. Chewie has seen jetpacks being part of the Clone Wars. Lando, not on the scene, but he would have seen jetpacks anyway because of Boba Fett. Fuck. Even Chewie has seen jetpacks. 3PO, their memory hasn't been wiped since Episode 3. They've all seen Boba Fett. Like, 3 of the 5 people on this speeder have seen Boba Fett. They know jetpacks are a thing. They know people can fly. It's not that hard of a stretch. Eventually they end up escaping the stormtroopers and find the ship, but end up in quicksand, which the quicksand ends up helping them find the MacGuffin dagger. Can you tell there's a lot of MacGuffins by how many times I actively try not to say MacGuffin, but I can't help it because it's such a fun word? Rey ends up meeting a giant snake in a quicksand tunnel, and I'm trying to move past this because it's such a stupid scene, but meets the snake monster under the quicksand and heals its injury. When I saw the injury, my first thought was, what injured a 40-foot-long massive snake monster, and can I see it? Because that would be awesome. Is it a Rancor? I'd want to see a Rancor. Are they going to fight the monster like Luke did, the Rancor, in Episode 6? Nope, nothing. I wanted to see Rey fight a monster. I wanted to see them all meet a Rancor and have to kill a monster. That would have been a cool scene that should have been the movie instead of the stupid healing. They end up finding the MacGuffin dagger because the snake was apparently just kind of, lying on the dagger. Rey finds the dagger through pure luck. They end up finding the dagger and head up to the ship to escape because they think the Empire has the Millennium Falcon. Then Rey turns into an actual fucking moron and walks out into the desert because she feels something. She feels Kylo Ren and heads out into the open. Chewie followers tell her they have to leave. He gets captured, because why not, and put on a transport. Finn follows them and sees this. Rey is busy. Okay, Finn follows and sees this, and then while this is happening and Chewie's getting captured, Rey is busy doing acrobatics from the first trailer, jumping over Kylo Ren's ship from the first trailer. Why she is jumping over Kylo Ren's ship from the first trailer? I keep saying first trailer to process the point that this scene only exists for a trailer shot. They could have shot at the TIE Fighter. She could have used the Force on the TIE Fighter. There are so many other methods instead of nearly getting run over by a TIE Fighter to stop the TIE Fighter. Why she does any of this, though, instead of just leaving and ignoring Kylo Ren, who knows? She went from all-powerful Mary Sue during 7 and 8 into a moron in the span of these few minutes. She then makes Kylo's ship crash, and he survives because Force, because, the Force can just do whatever. That's how everyone survives now. Using her overpowered Force abilities, she Okay, let me back up a bit. Finn ends up running out and yelling at Rey that the ship is taken off as Chewie prisoner. Using her overpowered Force abilities, she ends up stopping the ship midair, and Kylo Ren tries to stop her using the Force. They end up holding the ship in midair so it's not moving at all, and Rey gets mad at him and life itself for some reason because it's stressful holding the ship in midair. I'm not exactly sure, but she gets angry. While Finn is just kind of standing there, useless, instead of shooting at Kylo Ren or shooting at the ship's thrusters or doing anything, Rey in her anger shoots Force lightning at the ship. The altruistic Rey somehow uses the Force to shoot lightning. The lightest aligned Jedi ever is using the dark side's power. How? Rey is only perfectly altruistic and accidentally uses Sith powers, which I haven't even seen Kylo Ren use yet, because it's not even clear if he is a Sith. Snoke used Force lightning, so he is a Sith, or at least using the dark side. Kylo Ren shows he's just an evil Jedi. He's a dark Jedi. Really. He's not a Sith. He's not like a Night Sister. He's not a Night Brother from Dothraki. Dathomir. I'm referencing Game of Thrones in this video now because of how stupid this thing is. This is worse than Game of Thrones Season 8. She ends up shooting Force lightning at the ship. While that makes no sense at all, she ends up blowing up the ship somehow. Because lightning and ship fuel, boom. Kylo Ren stands there like a moron, while Rey screams Chewie, and Rey and her friends end up escaping. While Chewie, the Wookiee, the myth, the legend, dies. And Chewie's alive! I shit you not. The very next scene shows Hux bitching that they lost a transport and troops, but they have a prisoner. Wow. Guess who it is? It's Chewie! He was dead for about 5 seconds, I think, before they faked it. Turns out Chewie had the MacGuffin dagger that Rey and Poe and everyone else needed, and they have no way to find out where to go. But then, magically, 3PO then tells everyone he can read Sith, but sadly his programming doesn't let him speak the coordinates or read it out loud. How that works? No idea. What if they just told him, you now have to read everything out loud? He's a droid. But, like, how? First of all, how? Anakin Skywalker built him, and he didn't know what a Sith was at the time, so how would he stop him from speaking it? Second, Padme owned him next, and then Bail Organa, and then Leia Organa. So who owned him and decided that no reading Sith, that's not allowed? This moment, it's so contrived and makes no sense, but turns out they can hack him and get the information out. Luckily, Poe knows someone on another planet. And then, welcome to Canada. It's snowing and cold, and they're looking for Poe's friend, who isn't his friend. But just now realizing this is just like 7. They had to find Maz, and then 8 they needed a codebreaker. Does the rebellion just have no one useful? They find Poe's ex-girlfriend, who tries to kill them first, and then after Rey kicks all their asses, she likes Rey. They then find Poe's friend, the little gnome. I'm gonna call him a gnome. I know his name is Babu Frick, but I like calling him a gnome. The gnome says that to get the memory, they have to wipe 3PO's memory to get it out. I don't know how that works, or how that makes any sense whatsoever, but they do it. And 3PO wakes up afterward and says his whole introduction from episode 1.
I am C-3PO Human Cyborg Relations. How might I serve you?
This is J.J. Abrams' fan service. There's a lot of references to the prequel trilogy, actually, during this movie. There's the
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
there is
I am C-3PO Human Cyborg Relations. How might I serve you?
there is
Do it!
There's Mace Windu's voice, Obi-Wan's voice, Qui-Gon's voice. I think Qui-Gon had a voice. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's voice. They milked the fan service. But this movie is not fan service, because it would have been fan service if they made a decent movie. 3PO then reads it, and they find out where the planet is, but then Rey feels Kyle's ship in the sky and feels Chewie's alive, which, Rey's inconsistent beyond belief, but more plot holes, again. How can Rey feel Chewie's alive on the ship, and sense him in orbit, but earlier she somehow couldn't feel that she didn't accidentally murder his ass? There's no way the transport that Chewie was on got further away that fast than the Star Destroyer in orbit is from Rey. And why couldn't she feel that Chewie wasn't on that ship to begin with? I get she's emotions are running rampant when her Kylo Ren is there, but like, Chewie's either on the ship and you can feel him, or he dies and you can feel him die. But you didn't feel either, so you just kind of assumed he died for no reason. It's just, you're so inconsistent. At least be inconsistent consistently. Well, I guess that's what you are. She can end up sensing a non-force sensitive on the ship, but Kylo Ren can't. Let me clarify this. Another inconsistency is that Rey can somehow sense Chewie on the ship, a non-force sensitive, but Kylo Ren, a force sensitive, grandson of Darth Vader, son of Leia, nephew to Luke, can't sense whether or not Rey, granddaughter of Palpatine, massively overpowered force sensitive, is on the planet, or whether or not she's entering his own private quarters. That makes sense. They then decide to go save Chewie, and Poe's ex gives him a ticket to get onto the Star Destroyer without being found. Basically just another MacGuffin so they can get the other MacGuffin, dagger that's on the ship with Chewie. Poe and Finn find Chewie, and they save him, only for Poe to get shot and not die, even though every other shot automatically kills a stormtrooper. Logic evades me with every second of this movie. While this happens, Rey ends up in Kyle's bedroom and finds the MacGuffin called. I thought it was a holocron, but it's the exact same shape as a holocron. Looks like a holocron. Looks, feels, talks like a holocron, but it's not a holocron. They end up finding Chewie. Finn and Poe find Chewie, and they save him. But Poe gets shot, and they get captured. Then they get sentenced to die via Hux and 3 stormtroopers. And while this happens, Rey finds the bedroom, and they find the Wayfinder, which, lovely name, by the way. Very creative. The Wayfinder helps them find the way. Are you amazed? I am. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I forget when it happened, but Rey is told that she's Palpatine's granddaughter and that her parents were nobody, but her grandfather was someone. Kyle then Force Skypes Rey from the planet they were just on. I think the snow planet is Kojima. Kylo Ren is down on the planet with all his Knights of Ren people, and he Force Skypes Rey on the ship. And they end up fighting via Force Skype, which I didn't know was possible, because Luke couldn't touch anything when he did his whole projection thing in Episode 8. But fuck consistency. Who cares if the Force makes sense? Really, who cares anymore? Honestly, the Force doesn't have to make sense anymore. It just does whatever you want it to. They end up fighting, and they end up destroying half his bedroom, and Darth Vader's helmet ends up thrown to the floor, which gets transported to Kyle on the planet below. And yeah, that's a foreshadow of what happens later on in the film when they end up moving the lightsaber from Rey to Kylo Ren. Great ability of foreshadowing, isn't it? So Rey ends up escaping, and Kylo Ren tries to stop her, and to get her to join him, which feels stupid, because why? She already refused you once.
Rey, I want you to join me.
How about no?
And Hux was a spy who saved Finn, Poe, and Chewie. See, that was non-consequential. I didn't even need to care about that, because he dies like 2 seconds later. He saves them, by the way, by yelling, "I'm a spy!" And they all escape, and Hux stays behind for some reason. To continue being a spy, I don't know why. I also don't know why Hux would ever betray the First Order, considering he's been there the whole time. Like, he was the front runner of the Starkiller base. Why would he change sides? Is it because Kylo Ren took over? I don't know. He seemed quite obedient of Kylo at the end of the Last Jedi, but whatever. Then Hux ends up dying via General Pride.
Get me the Supreme Leader. Yes, sir.
This is also probably the only death in the whole movie that makes sense, and it's pathetic. Rey and friends end up leaving the ship, and they head to a random planet near Endor, where there is a massive chunk of Death Star just on the planet. Poe crashes the ship because the landing gear was somehow damaged when? I have no idea. There was never any time they landed badly. There was never any time the ship even got shot. So who knows? They end up meeting some First Order defects just like Finn, and it is explained that they all defected because they had a feeling. So they had a feeling, like Finn had a feeling, like Rey has feelings. So they're either all Force sensitive. So it ends up being hinted in this movie that all those that defected from the First Order were Force sensitive. But if so, wouldn't the entire First Order be Force sensitive? Which is absolutely moronic, because Finn defecting was treated as unusual and an anomaly, but now it's retconned that entire platoons of stormtroopers are defecting. You utter morons! This completely takes away from Finn's uniqueness as a character, and the most interesting part about him. The Force Awakens treats Finn's defection as a super rare event, while whatever her name is says her entire platoon defected. Just how incompetent is the First Order that their supposed indoctrination tactics fail that badly? Not only that, but it contradicts The Force Awakens. Come on, JJ, you're contradicting your own movie here. Not only that, but the second Finn started showing emotions in The Force Awakens, wouldn't the Empire have learned to just kill them lest they end up risking a mutiny again? If entire platoons are already defecting and you have one stormtrooper is defecting as well, wouldn't you just automatically go send him to the brig or shoot him on sight? He refused orders. That's keeping him around isn't how you keep loyalty or stormtroopers from defecting. Like, come on, being consistent can't be that hard. It takes effort to be this inconsistent. Plus, it's implied that they end up becoming independent because of the Force giving them a feeling. So, did the Force get rid of their brainwash training? This isn't explained at all, and it's kind of important. Maybe instead of having useless sand snakes and hyperspace skipping, give the characters some proper development and backstory. Rey ends up telling Poe that she had a feeling, and Finn responds, "It was the Force." So, there's never any alternative given, so we're left with the belief that the Force is suddenly a force for good and against slavery, but
That's not how the Force works.
you morons. It doesn't work like that. It's supposed to be the thing that gives life to everything and has a light and dark side that certain individuals are strong with and can learn to use. How do you fuck up explaining of the pre-existing rules of a universe already made? It's a superpower, a 40-year-old superpower in universe. So unless you have a tiny connection to the Force to give you a feeling now, you're a mass murdering piece of shit unless the Force gives you a feeling to not murder people. But Kylo Ren is evil anyway, and so is Palpatine. Why didn't the Force give them a fucking conscience? Or a feeling? Ugh. If the conditioning is so unreliable, the First Order wouldn't have millions of troopers. It works, except when it doesn't. The whole act of fighting and killing stormtroopers is now so morally gray, because they aren't in support of the Empire. They're just brainwashed children who are unlucky enough to get brainwashed, and not have the Force save them like it did Finn and a whole platoon of stormtroopers. In the original trilogy, they were people. We didn't have this whole backstory in stormtroopers. They were evil, supporting the Empire, so you killed them. This time, they are children. Finn, from his context, comes across as a fucking psychopath, laughing as he blows up the First Order's troops, who are all also brainwashed as kids, and still brainwash and indentured servitude. The whole reason the clones did what they did in the prequels was because they had chips in their head and were altered to be obedient, and even then, they had free will to a certain extent. So much so that some were even able to go against their programming and take out their chips controlling them. And that is canon too, from Disney's own cartoons of the Clone Wars and Rebels. Why are you trying to break your own lore? Imbeciles! The Empire had volunteers in the originals. They were regular people. At least murdering them made sense. They supported the Empire. Yes, I'm off topic as shit, but the fact that you introduced having stormtroopers that end up disobeying them and going rogue in full platoons breaks so much of this. Like, you can just choose to kill them. The First Order has brainwashed children who were abducted to be soldiers. They could be saved, but Finn and the Rebellion end up just choosing to kill them. That's fucked. That's psychopathic, to an extent. Sorry guys, we could save you from your brainwashing, and this isn't your fault you're fighting for the evil side. I think we'll just kill you instead. Like, because of these massive holes and plot errors, Finn has to be the most wasted character ever. An ex-stormtrooper who fought against his programming and forced to fight against those he saw as brothers and sisters, and who is in fact Force-sensitive, or at least that's what we're led to believe. He has so much potential, but instead they had him turn against his friends, and the only flamme he ever had while making jokes and quippy one-liners. He should have been the main character instead. We got Rey, Palpatine, and Kyle. Fucking Kyle. They tried to get in depth and have the stormtroopers be humanized and actual people, while at the same time having a useless army the good guys could kill no problem. They could have had a whole arc of Finn trying to save stormtroopers from Starkiller Base in 7 or 8, or even 9, thinking it's not their fault so that they're like this, while the Rebellion is slaughtering them without a care in the world. You could have had actual character development and conflict, but you just didn't. Back to the travesty that is this movie. Rey ends up sneaking away from the group of stormtroopers and Poe and Finn, And there's a bit that makes no sense again. You have horrible choppy waters, which the locals are the stormtrooper people. The locals end up saying you cannot cross until morning, and Rey decides we don't have time to wait till morning. Steals a mini boat and crosses the whole ravenous ravine thing filled with water, with waves taller than like 10 times her height. Probably more than that. And crosses the river, no problem. Upon seeing this, Finn decides to start yelling. They have to follow her, and they grab another mini boat and head out to chase after her, like they didn't just say it's too dangerous and they will likely die trying to cross the waters until they calm down. So that whole stay here or die point was completely meaningless. Rey ends up being right again that they made it across, and has no consequences whatsoever to this. Sure, she ends up fighting Kylo Ren, but that doesn't have any consequences. Poe in The Last Jedi does this exact same thing and goes against what people tell them, and everyone lost their mind. Rey does it, no one cares. They end up supporting her. She does this, despite being raised on a desert planet as well, and only a year ago learned what a fucking tree was and saw a lake. Oh yeah, she can swim because she did it in The Last Jedi, even though that was her first time in a lake, and that made no sense as well. Ugh, why was this movie made by idiots? There are also no consequences for her going alone. Finn's fine, Poe's fine, the droids are all okay, Rey isn't injured or hurt at all. The only lasting consequence is Rey ends up fighting Kylo Ren alone, which she does so by choice anyway, instead of having Finn or Poe help her, because Poe's standing there later on, and he runs to help her, and Rey forces him away, even though he could have probably shot Ren in the head while they were fighting. Rey ends up using her master scavenger skills afterwards. She makes it to the Death Star, and uses these skills to climb the wreckage. She climbs this thing, climbs the Death Star. Think about how big that is. That's like a mini skyscraper right there, the amount of stuff she would have to climb to get to the throne room. And she climbs it until she gets to the throne room in episode 6. Easter eggs and fan service galore of this whole thing existing. I think they changed the throne room a bit too, because I don't remember the door existing that she goes into, but the main point is the fact that the entire section of the Death Star shouldn't even exist. This whole wreck shouldn't exist on this planet, because they blew it into nothingness. Go watch episode 6. It'll be boom, no wreckage. Just a big boom like a nuke went off, and there's nothing left of the battle station. Nothing at all. Rey ends up going through the door to have her force vision from the trail of evil Rey, and she finds the MacGuffin. Yeah. Oh yeah, the first trailer of evil Rey, when everyone was like, oh no, is Rey gonna go bad? And yet, no, everyone thought that it'd be a force vision. It was exactly that. And Rey ends up finding her MacGuffin, and then she falls out of the room after fighting Sith Rey for like 2 seconds. Then Kylo Ren appears out of literally nowhere. How'd he get up there? How'd he get past Finn and Poe and the Stormtrooper platoon to get to the throne room? How'd he even climb up there? Did he just kind of swing him through a window like Tarzan? Like, it's just convenience. He's just there because the plot needs it, and the plot doesn't even need him to be there. Ugh. Oh, and he came alone too. There's no Knights of Ren or anything. I doubt they would have helped much anyway, given Rey is all-powerful. But still, it's the thought that would have counted to bringing some reinforcements. Rey gets mad he broke her toy and screams at him, and then they fight. I also wish to point out during this entire fight, Rey is winning too. She's already beaten Kylo Ren twice, and those were both times with no training. She beat him in episode 7, where he got a scar. She beat him in episode 8, when she's had 3 days of training, and now she's kicking his ass again. I'm surprised she isn't able to just force push him into the sun and walk away. In the middle of the fight, they end up in the middle of the massive ocean place, with waves that are insanely huge, and it goes on for a bit, and she's winning, and Kylo Ren is still fighting her. There's no reason for this, but Leia ends up intervening. Leia senses the fight, and stops the fight by saying, Ben. Ben ends up stopping from stabbing her, and Rey stabs Kyle in the chest, and he falls. He is also not dead, because plot, and also because Force, just like everything else in this movie, the Force is the reason for everything. Oh yeah, Leia ends up dying. I know she had to die, because Carrie Fisher ended up passing away, but couldn't they have made it somewhat realistic? Leia dies because she used all of her willpower, or as I say, Force. She died because Force. That's the only reasoning behind this. Is at this point, I think the movie loses its shit completely, and any semblance of plot or consistency. And I can't make this point large enough. The movie was already making me lose my mind when this happened, but it goes completely off the rails afterwards. It's not really explained why she dies. She just says Ben to Ben, and then he just kind of feels like dying. She copied Luke in that regard, I guess, but she's not the only one who just kind of feels like dying in this movie, and I'll get to that later on. But after she dies, Kylo Ren is stabbed, he's on the ground, he is dying. The man who's murdered millions, tried to take over the galaxy, is responsible for planets full of deaths, is dying, and what does Rey do? She heals him. The man who murdered her father figure, Luke Skywalker, and the cause of Leia's death, and probably billions of people, because planets probably have billions of people each, so who knows how many people he's killed. She heals him. Why? Who knows? Romeo and Juliet is what I'm going with, because she's on the light, he's on the dark. It's a forbidden love story, and fan service, I guess. She could have just let him die, and that would have been the end of the First Order right there. Yes, Palpatine would have been alive, but she still had the MacGuffin, and could have gone after him like that, but she saves his sorry ass for some reason. Rey ends up stealing Kylo's ship after telling him she would have taken his hand and wanted to join him. Why? I don't know. Because reasons, and because Force, apparently. That's the reasoning for everything. She would have joined a mass-murdering nutcase with anger issues who murdered her father figure in 7, and then her other sort of father figure in 8, and ended up being the reason her mother figure died. That is not even touching on the attempted torture in Episode 7, and the blowing up of 5 planets he helped facilitate the death of. This movie has the plot of a video game, with traveling around for a piece they call the Wayfinder that finds the way. They fake Chewie's death and 3PO's mind wipe, so they're both fine later on. They go around the galaxy searching for a MacGuffin to beat the big bad main boss. This movie is a video game. Rey ends up leaving using Kylo's ship, and leaving Kylo Ren just hanging out in the middle of the ocean area. Oh, so another thing that's ignored. They just kind of ignore wherever characters are located and have them disperse later on too, if you haven't noticed that already. Ben is on the water, surrounded by water, alone. Finn is still on that planet, Poe is still on that planet, the platoon of stormtroopers are still on that planet, and they just leave Ben there. They don't arrest him, they don't shoot him, they don't murder him, they don't do anything. And while nothing happens over there, Rey left to Acto, the old planet where Luke was being a hermit on, to become Luke 2.0. And she does this by throwing a temper tantrum and burning the TIE fighter she came on, and all her books, and throwing wood at it, while Purgs stare at her going, "What the fuck are you doing, lady?" Also, fucking Porgs are back. She then throws her lightsaber at the fire, and things happen again, and this is the moment I hate the Force. This is everything I hate about this movie in the next scene that occurs. Luke, as a Force ghost, interacts with the real world somehow, which should not be possible, and breaks more lore entirely. Suddenly, Force ghosts can pick up lightsabers. Does that mean Luke could technically just go to Palpatine's planet and stab him with a lightsaber as a ghost? Because if he can pick up a lightsaber, he can pick up a blaster. If he can pick up a blaster, he could just appear on Palpatine's planet, right in front of him, pick up a gun, shoot him in the head, go back to Rey and say, hey, problem solved. I did your job for you. Everything's good. Honestly, nothing is explained anymore. Ghosts were fine when they were just sitting on a log. Sitting on a log, you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. You're giving advice. You're advising the next generation. That seems like it could make sense to some degree. But nothing's explained anymore. There's no reason that Luke as a ghost can fight with a lightsaber now. He's not even a ghost anymore. He's just an immortal there doing whatever the fuck he feels like it. Ghost Luke ends up giving Rey a little pep talk and convinces her that she needs to go be a Jedi and confront Palpatine and save the galaxy. But Luke should have been the one doing this, honestly. If he was still alive right now, he would be going with him to go confront Palpatine. He'd be going with Rey and Kylo, and then he could... Honestly, this would be a better movie if you just had Luke still alive. Take Rey and Ben with him to Palpatine. He dies protecting them. Boom! Next generation of Jedi preserved. That would have been his last stand. But no, he had the stupid force projection in 8. But that's more off topic than the rest of this fucking video ends up being. What's the point of being alive as a Jedi anymore? You can just die and become all-powerful and do whatever you want. There are no rules anymore. You can do whatever the hell you want. It was established that you need training and to be highly in tune with the Force to be a Force ghost at first. Now, any Jedi and Force sensitive can just be a ghost. Later on, why doesn't Rey just die, become a Force ghost? But 2 seconds later, Ben dies and becomes a Force ghost. Neither of them have been trained in it, and how the fuck would Ben know how to do it anyway? And I know I said this previously, but this movie just keeps going further and further off the rails. It wasn't Leia dying that made the movie go off the rails. It was that point where the movie just lost its shit. Poe and Finn end up going to the forest planet, and they end up learning that Leia's dead. And Chewie's reaction. My God. Poor Chewie. His reaction is probably the main point of this movie I liked. His howls at the sky and the rage that Leia died. All his friends are now gone. Han's dead, Luke died, and now Leia's gone too. The entire original group of friends that saved the galaxy are all gone, except for him. Yeah, that sounded super sad. And I did that on purpose, because the scene of him screaming is amazing. It's probably the best scene in the movie of actual emotion and character. It broke my heart watching that part, actually. And I wish there was more of the movie like that. He's on the ground, howling at the sky, and people are trying to comfort him, and he's pushing them away. And the camera pans out while he's on the ground, just growling and howling and crying, and the scene changes to the ocean where Kyle got stabbed. Fucking Kyle again. And here, right here, I have so many more problems with this scene. Han Solo comes back to talk to him. Han Solo is a Horse ghost now, apparently, even though he's not blue, he's not ghosty, he's just kind of standing there. I think it's because Harrison Ford just went, fuck it, I'm here, don't do anything, I'm talking, just leave me the fuck alone. He probably appeared on set, said 5 things, and then left, and that was his entire paycheck right there. He probably got paid more than anyone else in this movie for those 5 lines. So, Kylo Ren is either hallucinating Han Solo, or Han Solo suddenly came back as a Force ghost, which makes even less sense, and should be impossible. Han Solo isn't a Jedi, or Force sensitive, so him being a Force ghost should be impossible. Now, it could have been Palpatine messing with his head, because as Palpatine said earlier, he has all the voices he's ever heard inside his head. But knowing that, isn't Kylo Ren being a little too trusting of Force ghosts that shouldn't exist? Like, just stop breaking the Force, you utter morons. That's not how the Force works. It doesn't work that way. It's not supposed to. It just complicates. It breaks things. I feel like they're just breaking lore on purpose in this movie. Then, after getting Kylo Ren's pep talk. Kylo throws his lightsaber into the ocean because it was a bad color. Really, that's the only reason I can think of that why he throws his most important tool into the ocean. It's red. It's an angry, mean color, and he doesn't like it anymore. As I saw this in the actual theater, I questioned his sanity. I questioned everyone's sanity in this movie, but I questioned his especially at this moment. I get the symbolism and all, but come on, guys. Keep the fucking weapon that could help you later on when you need to go kill Palpatine. Switching back to Rey, Luke, after the pep talk to Rey, lifts his white X-Wing out of the water and gets it ready for Rey. So, the ship was operational the whole time, meaning Luke could have left in Episode 8 to go help out himself. He didn't have to force project himself. And X-Wings are apparently waterproof after being submerged for years. I guaranteed what? There's a year between 8 and 9, so there's a year there. There's probably a few years. Either way, it's fine. It shouldn't be. It's fucking annoying. X-Wing should not be able to do that. Hell, it falling in a swamp in Episode 5 nearly broke the thing. Okay, Rey ends up taking Luke's X-Wing, wearing Luke's helmet. Rey then goes to Stormy Planet to confront Palpatine. No one stops her from going to him either. She just kind of strolls through his fortress until she reaches his throne room chair. And after staring at it for a bit, only then does she look around and notice she's in a massive fucking arena, surrounded by thousands of people in bleachers, who are obviously supporting Palpatine and work for him, otherwise why would they be there? Palpatine floats on his weird IV chair thing that's keeping him suspended above ground, and explains his master plan to Rey, and how if she strikes him down, she can take over and become his true heir and rule the galaxy. Oh yeah, and when he ends up telling Rey to kill him, he says,
Do it!
More fan service in this movie. You gotta give J.J. Abrams this much. He's trying in this movie. Because memes and throwback to Episode 3. But honestly, does anyone watching this movie think even for a second that Rey will turn to the dark side? She's altruistic beyond belief and way too perfect for that to ever happen. So she tricks him while force Skyping Kylo Ren and gives Kylo Ren her lightsaber because that's a thing that happens. Oh yeah, forgot about that little fact. Kylo Ren is here now, and he's now Ben because he's a good guy now. You can tell he's a good guy. Do you want to know why? Because he's changed his clothes before he went help Rey. Why? Did we really need the clothes changed to know he turned into a good guy? We could tell Vader went good in his massive scary suit in Episode 6, but Ben? No. Maybe he could have kept the mask on during the whole movie, and that would have represented his turn to the light. He could have strolled through the castle, mask and lightsaber in hand, with no resistance at all, until he reached Rey and then destroys his mask to dust or something, signifying his transformation. But nope. Why do that? That would have been dramatic, too, when he can be an idiot and throw his lightsaber away with the one of like 4 lightsaber crystals that are left in the galaxy. Because I don't know how they're making lightsabers anymore, but I'm pretty sure they've used all the possible kyber crystals to fund the Death Star 1, Death Star 2, probably part of the Starkiller base, and all those massive Star Destroyer cannons are probably powered by kyber crystals. Without those, where are you getting all the kyber crystals to power lightsabers at this point? It's just, what a waste of a lightsaber. He could have even dual-wielded into the throne room with Palpatine. It would have been more successful. But nope. Who cares about that? Fuck that. I'll just go in with a blaster and hope I don't die. Those 5 Knights of Ren that start kicking his ass get slaughtered when Ben has a lightsaber in hand. So maybe if you didn't throw your lightsaber in the lake because it's an evil color, you'd be winning this battle, you absolute moron. That's something else that bugged me. Not Ben's idiocy, because that's clearly well established, but the Knights of Ren being completely absent in The Last Jedi, only to return. Actually, didn't return. They had a cameo in 7, absent in 8, had their debut in 9, and were completely useless. They were complete and utter useless pieces of trash that appeared out of nowhere to pose a threat to Kylo Ren for about 2 minutes near the end of the movie. If Kylo Ren had kept his lightsaber, Rey would have had 2. You'd have had 1 to yourself the whole time, and you could have slaughtered them, walked in on Rey, and went, "Hey, I got a lightsaber, you got 2. Let's just stab him all at once. Problem solved." Hell, Rey kicked Palpatine's ass when she had 2 lightsabers. If she had 2 at the beginning of the fight, she could have just deflected lightning at the very beginning. Also, I like how whenever there's an Emperor figure, whether it's Snoke or Palpatine, they can just automatically use the Force on them and, like, fling them across the map. And it's like, oh look, don't Jedi have, like, Force shields and reasons that you can't normally just fling them around? Vader could do it in his prime as Vader, because he was Darth Vader. He was terrifying. There's a thing where Jedi have difficulty using the Force when they're fearful. That's why Grievous was so effective fighting against Jedi. They were terrified of him. He killed like 5 Jedi Masters at once, and then they feared him, and instead of using the Force on it like a normal droid, they sucked against him. That's why he was such a big threat. But Palpatine and Snoke, they just fling them around. And it's no effort whatsoever. It just makes no sense. Ugh. Now let's pause again for a second on the actual plot of what is happening, and look at Palpatine's entire plan. And I'll probably make a video of this eventually, trying to explain how utterly moronic his entire plan is, if he even had a plan at all, throughout the movie. It makes no sense whatsoever. They also butchered Palpatine's character. He would never want an heir. He wanted to reign over the Emperor, as Emperor, eternally. He went against the rule of 2. He had Maul, he had Count Dooku, he had Dooku have apprentices, he had multiple apprentices at once. He avidly was against it. He wanted to remain the sole ruler of the Sith. He didn't want Vader to take over. He wanted Luke to kill Vader. He wanted to be the master forever. And at the end, when she says no, he doesn't convince her. He goes, "Fuck it," and tries to kill Rey. If he wanted Rey alive, why send so many people to kill her? It makes no sense whatsoever. If he needs her alive to kill him so he can live on, why have Kylo Ren try and kill her? Why send people to kill her? Why have an assassin at the age of like 5 or 6 try to capture Rey if you need her to kill you, and then she's not captured, and then instead you go, okay, time to kill her? It makes no sense already. You flip the switch between kill and capture every 2.5 minutes in this movie. Honestly. Why do you even have everyone in the First Order trying to murder her, and then once you have her there, you say how you never wanted her dead, you needed her there to take over your empire? That makes no sense. Then when that fails, you go to kill her, and only by chance do you figure out you can sap away her and Ben's Force energy. But then, why have her killed at all, or hunted? On the off chance she goes and gets murdered, aren't you kinda fucked? And you have no heir or person to transfer your Force into. And you shouldn't need an heir to transfer your Force into. You can just transfer it into a clone of yourself, the many Snoke clones hanging around, or one of your 1,000 people that are your slaves at that planet. Really, even if one could only sustain the body for a few days, you have thousands, hop from body to body to body to body, or just take over Kylo Ren's. Palpatine goes from kill me and take the throne for yourself to fuck it, fine, I'll kill you instead in the blink of an eye. No trying to manipulate her or convince her to turn dark, just fuck it, let's kill her. Honestly, up until the moment he dies, he has everything land in his lap in this movie. Is Palpatine just extremely lucky with everyone being stupid? Or does he have a plan at all? Kylo Ren is honestly on top of Palpatine's plan this entire time. There is no moment where Ben is tricked whatsoever during this film. And even worse is when the rebellion arrives, we learn the Star Destroyers don't have any shields. How do you have a fleet of ships that can't use their shields? Why do you build a fleet on the one planet capable of forcing your fleet to turn on the shields? How utterly imbecilic is that? I'm trying to find new words to describe the mediocrity, the idiotic ideas involving Palpatine's plan. You built a fleet of Star Destroyers with planet-killing weapons that don't have shields. How? It's so contrived, that one fact, that this one space near the planet stops them from using their shields. Why is there that one little tower they need for navigation to get off the planet? Why bother sending the needed data to get from... Okay, when the rebellion arrives, they manage to get close and blow up the navigation tower. Right before then, they send that data to one ship. Why one ship? Why not just send it to all of the ships? If Ben can get in using the Wayfinder, if Rey can get in using the Wayfinder, if the Rebellion can get in using nothing, and then hundreds more ships can come in using nothing, why do you need this navigation bits? Why? That doesn't make any sense. If you needed it, then all the other ships to get out of this planet would probably need it. The Rebellion would be stranded here without it. Rey would be stranded here. Kylo Ren would be stranded here. Palpatine would be stranded here as well. If you needed them to get out of here, why? It blows my mind. The navigation from the tower is needed for every single Star Destroyer to get off this planet. And yet, somehow, every Rebellion ship doesn't need it. Luke's X-Wing doesn't need it that Rey flies. Kylo Ren's TIE Fighter at the beginning of the movie doesn't need it. They flew a Star Destroyer out of here already and blew up a planet. I don't remember which planet it was, because I don't think it really matters. But they flew one out already. Couldn't they just follow that one? At what point do they show that one getting blown up? Isn't it still useful at some point? Couldn't they just navigate to that one? Or have it fly in and then slowly back out and they follow it? The entire plot of having them need this stupid tower is moronic. It's just, my brain hurts trying to understand who the fuck came up with this plot. It just hurts my brain. Writing this review slowly killed me inside. Why bother sending the needed data to one ship? You could have just sent all the ships, and then you can have each ship get out by itself. Why was Palpatine not on one of the ships? Anyway, does he need this massive open area to do his little spiritual seance thing? Does he need to be in this massive arena surrounded by 1,000 people? I don't know. No one tells us this. No one questions him like, hey, Palpatine. Honestly, you could have had a scene that says that. You're stupid for being down here on this planet. You're surrounded by rebellion ships. And you go, well, I don't really have a fucking choice. I'm kind of stuck here to do this ritual thing. And they'd go, well, that's your demise. And then it doesn't even have to be that dramatic. Just what the fuck? Just why? He could be on a ship out of here. He could have had half his army waiting outside the Red Storm thing with planet-killing weapons and him on a ship with shields outside of it, and the other half waiting for the all-clear to come out. The only reason the Rebellion won is because the villains are written so moronically that a toddler could outwit them. Not only that, but when you think about it and take in the plots of the sequel trilogy, you can almost completely skip The Last Jedi. 7, 8, and 9 are so not connected whatsoever. You could watch them 7, 8, 9. You could watch them 8, 9. You could watch them 9. You could skip You could skip 8 and just knowing the facts that Luke and Snoke died. You could just say in a throwaway line, oh yeah, Luke died of a heart attack, and Snoke just Kylo Ren killed Snoke. That's it. Or you could just have a throwaway line, they both died of heart attacks at the same time. Maybe they killed each other using the Force. Because the Force can do anything.
That's not how the Force works.
Isn't that what the Force does? It can do whatever the plot needs it to do. I mean, that's what the movie makes us understand. There's no character development or anything that can't be ignored. This movie wouldn't even exist if the Death Star had actually been vaporized the way we saw in Episode 6. Honestly, you could skip the entire original trilogy, and the sequel trilogy ends up making more sense. You only watch the OT to see how Palpatine dies, and how Anakin is redeemed and brings balance with Luke. But he doesn't, and the balance is never achieved, so the OT ends up being pointless. Han reverts to a smuggler in Episode 7 the same way he started out in 4, so 5 and 6 aren't needed for Han's whole character arc existing. And Luke's character doesn't matter whatsoever. Leia doesn't matter because she's just a side character. The prequels don't do anywhere near as much damage as the sequels, because the sequels completely destroy the OT and make it nearly irrelevant entirely. The prequels were just bad in isolation, but they don't ruin the OT. I'm not one of the people that say the OT is perfectly as it is. It could have been better. There are improvements. The prequels are known to be bad, but the prequels don't ruin the original trilogy. If anything, they build upon it. It's like Anakin, Obi-Wan. This is the relationship behind the duel in Episode 4. This is how Luke came to be. This is where Mon Mothma came to be. It's an origin story. These movies that come after Episode 6, all of them in the grand total, Rise of Skywalker especially, that's why I'm making this review, completely annihilate whatever lore existed in 4, 5, and 6. Force Ghosts, dead. Hyperspace, dead. Leia, dead. Jedi training, dead. Yoda, dead. Force Ghosts being able to do anything useful. Oh look, they can start Force Storms whenever they want to. Why didn't Yoda and Obi-Wan appear in front of Palpatine and do that? Plot. Why couldn't Luke force heal Vader? Why didn't Anakin force heal Padme? Why didn't Obi-Wan force heal Qui-Gon? Makes no sense at all. And that is fucking depressing, that you could skip the entire original trilogy and these movies make more sense. Ugh. I tried to keep that whole spiel out of this review, but it was such a main problem with this movie that it destroys everything that came before it. Now, I hate myself so much for having watched this movie. Let's get back to the movie's excuse for a plot. Ben and Rey are now in front of Palpatine after Rey shows off how overpowered and all-powerful she is, even pulling a Vader and absorbing blast fire and redirecting it at the other people protecting Palpatine. Palpatine then gets mad at them and tries to use Force Lightning at them, only for them to launch it back somehow, and he absorbs part of their Force energy in doing so. He does so by accident, which I don't know how you do it by accident. Then Palpatine's turn. Palpatine, this is the most hilarious part of the movie, is Palpatine turns into a Dementor from Harry Potter and sucks the life out of them. That's literally what it looks like. If you took the scene and threw it in Harry Potter, it would make more sense. Things are just happening at this point. Could Palpatine always do this? I don't know. Is this a special thing between Rey and Kylo Ren that, they're a dyad, whatever that means? Palpatine barely even knows what that means. Frickin' Kylo Ren's the first one who says it, and he barely knows what that means. So, if so, why not start with this? Or, don't stop until Rey and Ben have all their Force energy sucked away and they're just dead now? He could have sucked away all their life and been perfectly healed instead of still looking like half a scrotum. He then sucks away Ben and Rey's life, and he looks better and less like a zombie afterwards. Then the camera backs away from him, and while I was watching this movie, I outright laughed over this fact that he changed clothes from one screen to another screen. Like, there was no time skip, nothing. It went from his face was healing, he looked less like a dying zombie from The Walking Dead, and then all of a sudden, his clothes are red. Out of nowhere, his black cloak changes to him having some bright red robes with a red ascot looking thing below his neck, and it's just, what the fuck, where did that come from? He just automatically changes clothes the same way Ben did, but at least Ben cut screens for 10 minutes first, and then he showed up in a shirt. No armor, no nothing, he showed up in a shirt. This dude's got some robes flowing, he looks like the Emperor of China. It's hilarious. Ignoring the idiotic wardrobe change of him going, no, black robes are out of style now. I need some red. I'll look extra Sithy in this. Fuck me. Why? Rey and Ben are now just dying on the ground. Why he doesn't just finish them off, I don't know. He could just keep sucking away their life energy until they're just husks and skeletons. But I don't know. It's never properly explained why he can't do that, or if he can do that. When you suck away life energy, does a little bit have to remain? If so, why? But there's no answers in this movie for any of my questions that I have. He just leaves them half dead on the floor, and then Ben tries to get up, and then he gets flung into a pit. But don't worry, guys. Palpatine's alive, so this is Star Wars. Fall damage is not a thing. Otherwise, Palpatine would be dead too, so Ben is fine. He'll be back in like 10, 15 minutes. Palpatine then launches a massive sky beam of lightning into space at the Rebellion. And yes, this is what Star Wars has become. I know there were beams destroying planets, but they did that first before Marvel. Palpatine did the whole sky beam thing. They copied Marvel in this aspect. But Disney owns them both, so I'm not really all that shocked. This is what I said at the beginning of the movie, though, when I said Palpatine is so overtly powerful that if the Rebellion pulls a win, they shouldn't have won. The stakes and the enemy forces are massive in comparison, that any hope of winning for the Rebellion should be outright impossible. This lightning successfully shoots up, and it ends up hitting every single Rebellion ship and turns them off. I'm amazed that, first of all, I'm amazed that no First Order ship is being caught in the crossfire, because even if one stray bolt hit one of the many, many, many Death Star cannons that are in space on a Star Destroyer, that thing would just blow up one whole Star Destroyer, and that's gone, one of your massive ships. The Rebellion ships just end up short-circuiting somehow, and they all end up taking an inordinately long time to crash to the planet after being shocked with death lightning. Also, shouldn't the lightning have ignited the actual ship into exploding like earlier in the movie when we see lightning beforehand? Rey shoots it at a transport earlier when she thought it had Chewie on it. The ship went boom and exploded and she yelled, "Chewie!" But no, it's not exploding. It's just short-circuiting it. The laws of lightning are broken in this movie. This movie isn't even consistent with itself. Rey shoots lightning earlier in the movie, which should theoretically be less powerful than Palpatine right now. And she makes a ship blow up. Palpatine, hyped up on Ben and Rey's force powers, shoots a sky beam and only short circuits the ships. Like, even then, if you want to, they should at least turn off. And not like, oh look, the navigation's ruined and now we're just slowly falling to the planet. I know gravity's different on every planet, but come on, they're just slowly falling down to the planet. It's comical. Come on, JJ, it's your own movie. At least be consistent with it somewhat. It's just annoying. Oh yeah. And fuck, I forgot. As I mentioned, the Rebellion is in space. That the whole Rebellion is happening over top of Rey. The Rebellion ends up being here. And quick side note on that Rebellion. How does no one question the validity of Palpatine being alive? No one in the entire Rebellion meeting, when they realized he was alive, and I'm backtracking a bit when I say this, no one questioned him being alive. Like, the entire Rebellion just accepts it as fact. Like, there's no way this could be faked or a trap. The Rebellion just believes he's alive, and it's not going to be a trap in any way, shape, or form. Palpatine is known as he should be known at this point as a master manipulator to become Emperor, and the layer of traps. Like, Episode 6, the entire end battle was... It's a trap! He could have lured the entire Rebellion out onto this planet, and they could have showed up to a giant nuke instead of an actual planet with a base on it, and just blown them all up. All while he's on the other side of the galaxy blowing up planets with his many, many Star Destroyer planet busters. Like, it just blows my mind. I think that's a pun, because they blow up planets. And the genius of the Rebellion is to bring whatever ships they had available to the storm planet with no idea the enemy's forces. Because the enemy, they know, has a massive fleet of Star Destroyers, which they know have Death Star cannons on them. But they send, 20 ships? I know you're the Rebellion, and you're supposed to be small in comparison, but make it somewhat believable. Like the whole Death Star in Episode 4, it was believable to an extent. They sent 2, maybe 3 squadrons of X-Wings, and the goal was to shoot one rocket down there. They just needed one X-Wing to make it. One X-Wing makes it, and it's Luke's because he has the Force, and he blows it up. This thing, they have 1,000 10,000 or so ships just hanging out there, waiting, and they decide to shoot at them with 20 ships. And somehow they survive and aren't just shot at by a massive wall of Death Star cannons. And they do this while sending out all while sending out distress signals with the Millennium Falcon to retrieve reinforcements. The rebellion ends up being slaughtered, and their great plan to destroy the navigation satellite fails. So, to destroy the other one on a Star Destroyer, Finn has an amazing plan. I hate this plan so much. I hate most of this movie, because it frustrates me to a nauseating degree, but I hate Finn's plan, especially. Like, heads up, like all plans in this movie, it's a stupid-ass decision, somehow involving horses being dropped. Yeah, there are horses in Star Wars now, and people charging on top of the Star Destroyer on top of the horses. They're in space, on horses, on a spaceship. They do this because the First Order, in a throwaway line, can somehow jam speeders, which I don't know how that works, because I'm pretty sure a speeder would be like a car, and unless you have an EMP, I don't think you're turning off the speeder or a car. When can you jam speeders to begin with? And secondly, oh god, they're riding horses in open space on a spaceship. Now, even if they're in orbit, and there's a gravity and air, you're on horses on a spaceship. Like, guaranteed tens of thousands of kilometers up into space, or up in the atmosphere. Either way, it's a stupid-ass plan. Now, I know the ships have no navigation feature, which they mention multiple times, because the only way to navigate out of the space storm is with the little navigation tower. But can't many Star Destroyers just tilt like a 45-degree angle and the whole resistance just falls? That's like all you'd have to do. It would be so hilarious and so comical to just have one stormtrooper in the background go, sir, I have an idea. And he goes, what? Well, couldn't we just tilt the ship like a little bit and all the horses would like slide off? It'd be kind of funny to watch too. No, we must do this the hard way. Like, what the fuck? Someone on that spaceship had this idea and they just didn't do it. That's how incompetent the First Order is portrayed in this movie. The rebellion ends up being nearly destroyed except for Finn, his new girlfriend, and his new girlfriend's the weird stormtrooper lady who came there. That's her name now, his new girlfriend, because I don't know her name. She is not memorable in the slightest. And Poe is still alive, until, okay, those three and like 4 other people are alive, and that's like it. The entire fleet is decimated at this point. Until a massive Deus Ex Machina fleet hyperspaces in to save them. How did they get through the space storm is my first question, because this is like massive. This is like an entire Clone Wars era fleet ready to fight. How did they get through the space storm and manage to navigate it? No clue. I don't have a single clue behind that. The laws surrounding how to get to this planet and leave are ever changing. They end up blowing up a bunch of Star Destroyers when they all arrive, because they all have the same weakness, and moronically no active shields whatsoever. Not even a ray shield around their precious Death Star cannons, which if you shoot, blow up the ship. Who designed these? Like, have the guns be detachable to a degree. You know, if they end up blowing up, you can quickly push a button and then, oh, they're just blowing up in open space. What is it with every bad guy deciding, no, if this one parts of this ship blow up, the whole thing blows up? That's almost as bad as the bombers from The Last Jedi. You hit them once, and the whole thing, like, falls apart. It's like a tower of cards. It's idiotic. They end up appearing to be winning somehow. The rebellion starts to win, or at least that's what's hinted at. When music goes upwards, all the ships, they show the rebellion starting beating TIE fighters, and they kind of appear to be winning, which doesn't make sense, because there's still like 10,000 Star Destroyers, and there's probably like a couple hundred TIE fighters per Star Destroyer, with thousands more troopers at the ready, and somehow we're led to believe through the music and the visual cues in the movie that they're winning, even though they shouldn't be. But okay, they're supposed to be winning, and they're kind of winning right up until Palpatine fires his massive lightning up into the sky. Then he just turns them off. Now, Rey is on the ground dying at this point when the whole fleet is like falling down from the sky. She's just on the ground, staring at space, and starts to say, "Be with me," again. Like at the beginning of the movie, they hinted a lot of things early on in this movie like this, like the force healing, and the "be with me," and like the important parts of this movie are all hinted at the beginning, and then it happens. Like earlier in the movie, you'll end up seeing like Hux give Kylo Ren a little glare, and then turns out he's the spy. 3PO ends up not losing his memories. Chewie ends up still being alive. Everything ends up kind of like either every important thing ends up either being faked or it's hinted at an hour and a half ago. But anyway, she starts saying, "Be with me," and then all the past Jedi, from Yoda to Anakin to even Ahsoka Tano, who everyone thought was still alive after seeing her back in Rebels, tells Rey to rise. Get it? Get the reference? Rise. Like the title of the movie. Really subtle, isn't it? But Rey is a Palpatine, first of all. So really this movie should be called Rise of Palpatine, because that would have... Okay, that's even true, because Palpatine rises. Rey is a Palpatine. She rises. God, I can't say Palpatine to mean Palpatine anymore. If I say Palpatine, it could mean Rey or Palpatine. That's stupid, first of all, and I just realized that. But this movie should be called The Rise of Palpatine. It makes more sense during this one scene and the entire movie. But since Luke and all the Force Ghosts can interact with the real world and use Force powers, which is all now established in this movie and the last movie, why didn't Luke and all the past Jedi appear in this movie and just launch lightning at the Star Destroyers? Because they did that in Episode 8, and they can interact with everything they want to. They could just push a self-destruct button like, haha, fuck you, but they don't. They're direct implications of Yoda shooting lightning and Luke using the Force in this movie and interacting with the physical world, that they can do these things if they choose to. Like, it's semantics. I know you could argue I'm nitpicking this entire movie to shit, but it stands out so obviously that when Luke Skywalker catches a lightsaber, he can do other things. He can pick up a stick, and if he can pick up a stick, he can push a button. If he can push a button, he could, like, just flick a switch and launch one Star Destroyer into another, and then go to another ship, flick a switch, launch another one into another. He could cause a chain reaction of them all just crashing into each other, and just laugh his ass off as Palpatine starts swearing at him. That's how comical this movie turns out to be if you just think about it for a second. But just asking a question of, why doesn't he do that? Like, just comprehending what's happening in this movie and then applying it to the movie, you realize this plot makes no sense at all. And considering Palpatine went... Okay. Rey then, afterwards... I almost called her Palpatine, that's why. Fuck, that's annoying. Rey then picks up her lightsaber and starts to block Palpatine's Force lightning. And she does it really, really hard, with a lot of effort. And then he starts to shoot lightning at her. And considering he went from taking out an entire rebel fleet with his lightning that was like a meter wide and like a meter thick of just a giant beam of lightning, to shooting at a girl that's like 2 feet in front of him, Rey has now activated God mode somehow and claims that she, like Palpatine, is all the Sith. She is now all of the Jedi. And that's how she is somehow surviving this massive storm of lightning shooting at her. With Rey distracting him, and the lightning not shooting at the rebel fleet anymore, Finn and his girlfriend, fuck her name, I don't remember it, end up shooting a cannon. I don't know why this is possible either, to have a cannon actually shoot at the main bridge of the ship. I understand turning it around, that could be useful, but why have it possible to shoot at the main bridge? And again, like The Last Jedi, why don't the main bridges of these ships have shields? Shields are a thing. They are helpful in staying alive in the Star Wars universe. It's just stupid to not have them. It's just tempting fate at that point. But Finn and his girlfriend end up shooting at the bridge, and they blow it up. And, okay, remember in Episode 3, when Windu blocks Palpatine's lightning, and that's how he got deformed in Episode 3 to look like a scrotum to begin with? Rey somehow, blocking his lightning with both Luke and Leia's lightsabers, blocks the lightning and reflects it back at Palpatine, so much somehow that he disintegrates like Voldemort in Harry Potter. Because I'm not referencing the books when I say this, the movie. At the very end, when he gets shot with a spell and then he disintegrates into little specks. That is the exact scene. You could switch scenes here, honestly. You could just insert Voldemort here, and it would probably still make sense. Rey, however, blocking his lightning, somehow does that, but I'm questioning, how did Rey reflect the lightning right back at him? That's not how this works. Again,
That's not how the Force works.
it doesn't just reflect right back just because you want it to. That's not how lightning and lightsabers work. Lightsabers absorb it and don't normally reflect it back unless you're like a foot away like Windu was. It wouldn't cause Palpatine to completely disintegrate. Why didn't he just stop shooting the lightning to begin with? And upon Palpatine exploding, because why not? He literally explodes like a bomb. Rey ends up collapsing to the ground, and I'm going to back up a bit before I hit the cringiest part of this movie. Palpatine actually disintegrates and explodes like a bomb for some reason. And I know I just said that, but it's stupid. Most Jedi and anyone else in these movies, they die. They just die. Darth Vader dies. He just dies. That's it. When his skeleton is being burned, he turns into a Force ghost. Obi-Wan dies, he just disappears. Yoda dies, just disappears. Anyone else in these movies, they die, they just disappear. Some reason, for whatever reason in this movie, when Palpatine dies, he explodes in a shockwave. I don't know why, I don't know how, it just does, because that doesn't make any sense. Okay, when Rey falls over after Palpatine dies, she just collapses and dies, and that's it. She pulls a Luke and Leia and keels over and dies out of nowhere. Because that's a thing. Is everyone that dies in this movie who has the Force okay, that's a new thing with Star Wars now, is if you use the Force too much, you don't just faint or get tired, which I don't even think they had that normally, is if you use it too much, you can faint, you can get tired. That makes sense. But apparently, you could just die. Then, after she dies, occurred the biggest fuckery and the cringiest scene in the entire planet. And that's not an exaggeration, because my theater actually laughed when this happened. People audibly groaned when this happened. Ben comes back out of his little pit, and he finds Rey, and he heals her. After Rey dies, Ben uses healing, which was hinted at earlier in the movie when she healed the stupid snake, and when she healed Kylo Ren. She heals Rey, then they kiss, and then he just falls back and dies and becomes a Force ghost. And the way he dies isn't like, oh look, he dies. He's like kissing her and then stops and then just kind of falls and dies. It's comical. It's hilarious. I laughed at it. It was great. That was the only, like, okay, not the only scene. C-3PO was actually entertained in this movie. This was one of the scenes I laughed at that I don't think you're supposed to laugh at when people die. And he dies and then immediately becomes a Force ghost for some reason. And immediately after he dies and becomes a Force ghost, so does Leia. They like cut from him dying and disappearing to Leia dying under a sheet and disappearing. And I have to point something out quickly. So Rey dies, doesn't become a Force ghost, gets saved by Ben, and then he dies and becomes a Force ghost. That's like, it's just comical to me. And then okay, if they can do this, where she dies, he brings her back, then he dies. What if she went, oh no, don't die, and then brings him back, and then she dies, and they just keep going back and forth of trying to stop the other person from dying. That should be in the movie instead. That would have made this movie even better than it is. It makes more sense. Then they're like trying to fly somewhere to get them to a hospital, and then all of a sudden they're like, where are we? And then next person dies. That scene should exist somewhere. That's in the deleted scene somewhere. Someone had that idea, and it's deleted. That's how stupid this movie was. It could have been in this movie. And we were so close to having a proper Skywalker ending, too. Ben Solo, Ben Skywalker, Kylo Ren, whatever you want to name this dude, was still alive while the Palpatines were both dead and wiped out. But no! Ben had to bring her back for some reason, and somehow break decades worth of Star Wars lore in doing so. Because you can bring people back from the dead now. Why didn't Obi-Wan or Yoda use this Ex Machina healing to bring Padme back, the one thing keeping Anakin from, like, murdering the galaxy? Or Anakin could have used this Force healing to save her, or Luke could have used it to resurrect Anakin, or Obi-Wan could have used it to resurrect Qui-Gon in Episode 1, or fucking anyone could have revived anyone at any point after they died. It's an automatic Deus Ex Machina whenever someone important dies. Han didn't have to die. Luke didn't have to die. Leia didn't have to end up dying. No one has to die in this series anymore as long as there's a Jedi around. Ugh. I hate this movie so much. It's so bad. Death is unimportant in the Star Wars universe now. The only way you could die thanks to this healing is old age. If you're a Jedi, because I'm pretty sure the dark side would help somehow in old age. But realistically now, if you die via blaster shot or stab wound to the stomach, you can be healed by a Jedi. Rey healed lightsaber wound to the chest. Qui-Gon could have lived. Anakin probably could have lived at the end of Episode 6. Basically, death in its entirety is unimportant in the Star Wars universe. And that's so stupid. Because that's like the biggest fear and drive you could have in a movie or any series is, oh shit, someone's about to die, and you have them on their edge of the seats, waiting and seeing, oh no, what's going to happen? Is he going to die? Is he going to live? Is he going to die? Is he going to live? And then it doesn't matter anymore. Because any Star Wars movie that comes out after this, you could just go, well, he's fine. Why didn't you force heal him? It's going to be the meme for Star Wars that goes on forever now. It's like every movie that comes out after this, whether it's the rumored Knights of the Old Republic movies or the High Republic movies that they talk about, if there's a Jedi, death means nothing. Because Rey healed Kylo before he died, and that was a death wound. And she didn't die, but Kylo brought her back from the dead, and he died. So you could just bring people back from the dead now. Rey then ends up... Fuck me, I got so off topic bitching and complaining about the stupidity of force healing and resurrecting people in Star Wars. Okay, back to what's left of this travesty of a movie. Palpatine's dead. The whole building's collapsed, or collapsing in the process of doing it. Rey then leaves and follows the rebellion ships after they left, after they blew up the Star Destroyer with the navigation tower on it. And somehow, her one X-Wing, that's not her X-Wing, that is still Luke's X-Wing. Somehow, Luke's X-Wing manages to get past the hundreds of still operational, planet-killing Star Destroyers. no one stops her. And all of these ships are still operational. Isn't that a huge open end to the plot too? Like, hundreds of Star Destroyers are still around this planet, but the Rebellion says they can't get out because they don't have navigation. But don't the First Order ships have hyperspace tracking? This movie and the last movie introduced that. They solidified that fact. So can't the Star Destroyers just track the Rebellion through the space storm? That's all they'd have to do. Use the hyperspace tracking, which every TIE fighter now has, thanks to this movie, and follow them to their home planet. And then they could just have the entire fleet murder them within seconds. And that's it. The sequel to this movie should exist, of just them tracking the Rebellion and then blowing up their planet, and there goes the Rebellion. The Empire now controls the galaxy again, and whatever remaining general is left is now the Emperor. And that's it. The galaxy is fucked again. It's not like... Because really, it's not like the Empire is dead at the end of this movie. Hundreds of ships still remain, and thousands of Sith followers are in the temple, unless Rey ended up murdering all of them when Palpatine died and half the planet and the statues fell on top of them. Considering that's not touched upon at all in the last 5 minutes of the film, I'm gonna say that's just a fuck it, we'll leave that in the corner and never talk about it. Same way with every explanation in this film. Rey ends up leaving the planet, somehow getting through the space storm along with every other Rebellion trooper somehow. She heads to whatever forest planet they were on originally, which I'm calling Yavin. They head to Yavin, the forest planet. They're all celebrating. Finn, Poe, Rey, they all hug and celebrate. Chewie gets a medal from Maz Kanata because Episode 4, he didn't get one. So 20 years later, it's so much better. And it's such a blatant fan service. I didn't care if Chewie got a medal. It might be a nice touch. I'm sure a lot of people probably liked it. Like, hey, Chewie finally got that medal he was cheated out of. But really, who cares? It's just such a weird scene in the context of the movie. Like, if you made an extra movie between 4 and 5 and it had him given him a medal, this movie, it's just so random. Like, he's the only one that gets a medal in this scene. If they had showed, like, every Rebellion trooper got a medal afterwards in, like, some big ceremony, and all the volunteers who helped out, they all get medals, they give Chewie 2 medals and say, you deserve this. That would have made sense. But in this, it's like, Maz Kanata wasn't even there. And if that... Okay, apparently that's Han's actual medal, though. So, that doesn't help anything. How did Maz Kanata get it? Where was the stupid medal? Was he just hanging out in the Falcon? And if so, wouldn't Chewie, like, just hang on to that, maybe as a memento of Han? Like, I don't know. I feel like it'd be a nice touch if Chewie just kind of, like, there was a scene of him opening a glove compartment and pulling it out and just, like, sticking it on himself and then roaring to the sky or something. That'd be a nice little touch. He misses Han. He's sad. He's happy he beat the Rebellion. Or beat the Rebellion. He beat the fucking Empire. They're all the same thing at this point anyway. That would have made... Like, it just makes more sense to me, honestly. So much more of this movie makes sense if you redo this movie, because the movie makes no sense. The whole Rebellion is celebrating. They end up hugging. Chewie is all alone while this is happening after he gets his medal. And I'm realizing that again, and that's still fucking sad, because all his friends are dead, really. And that was very sad in this movie. But Lando and the ex-stormtrooper, Finn's girlfriend, lady, whatever she is, end up having a moment about finding where she's from. But, okay, I'm so close to the ending of this movie, and it's still confusing me and pissing me off. They end up having this weird moment where, I don't know, it's a confusing relationship. I'm confused by it. Either the ex-stormtrooper and Lando are having a spin-off series about finding where she's from, or Lando is dating someone 55 years younger than him, which I'm desperately hoping neither. If it's either of them, why, or that's just nasty. But I looked this up, and it kept showing up afterwards, that apparently she's his daughter in a deleted scene, and why? I don't understand. Why include that, or why have that canon or not canon at all? It adds nothing. It's just a small factoid of like, okay, cool. Can it just end now? It wasn't in the movie, so I didn't know it. Same thing with all the explanations on how Palpatine was alive. It would have been cool to have it in the movie, but it wasn't. Because fuck actual really relevant things. They're all celebrating, and we pan away from the planet in the celebration of the rebellion, showing a whole bunch, like 5 maybe, not even, other planets with Star Destroyers in orbit, and all the Star Destroyers that we were shown end up being blown out of orbit, showing the rebellion took back the galaxy. Hooray! But that's just bringing up more questions. This trilogy doesn't explain. Everything seems so isolated in this movie, even though they go to like 10 different planets. And the last movie was a mini space chase. That one was just as isolated. I thought the Republic still ruled in Episode 7, and only a few days happened between 7 and 8, so the Republic should still be ruling during 8. So, who's in command of the galaxy? Like, the Rebellion has been the Rebellion, and the Resistance fighting the First Order, and the First Order has been made up of barely any ships or men, that they needed Palpatine's fleet during this movie to increase their power 10,000-fold. So who ruled the galaxy? And if each planet only had one Star Destroyer just hanging out, how has no one ever taken back the galaxy or their own planet by now? Just some world building, some galaxy building and understanding would have been nice to have. Explain the state of the galaxy and not just the small, isolated incidents that make up this movie. The actual fate of the galaxy is supposed to be at stake, but it's never explained why or how or what is happening to the galaxy as a whole. Which, in a space story where the galaxy is at stake, it becomes a little bit relevant. After that small scene, which somehow managed to want this movie to end more, we're finally in the last home stretch of the movie. Rey travels to Tatooine. I don't know why, but she does. And she finds the old Lars settlement, where Luke grew up and where Anakin's mom was buried. And she buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers in the sand after having a little sand slide down on a sled. I don't know what was happening there. I think it was a homage to Episode 7, where she did a little slide down a sand hill. I don't know. She just did it. She had a smile on her face. I don't get why. Just it happened. And she ends up igniting her golden lightsaber. And again, questions that don't get answered of where did she get the lightsaber crystal? A Jedi getting their lightsaber crystal was told to be a huge thing. It was a huge trial during the Republic, and a Jedi spends days acting during huge physical and spiritual tests, and then she just has one. Like, I remember whole episodes in the Clone Wars series of Jedi and how they get their crystals, and it's interesting. Like, it's almost like the Force Cave on Dagobah. It's a trial to get it. Yet they didn't show this for Anakin and Luke in the movies, but Luke lost a hand in Episode 5, so that's kind of a trial in my opinion. And the same applies for Anakin in Episode 2, even though I think they gave him a trial in the old cartoon. But she just has one, no hardship needed, or it just occurred off screen, which everything plot relevant and character relevant happens off screen in this movie. Characters don't get development. That's not a thing that exists anymore. But Anakin and Luke, they go through trials of body, I think is what you'd call it. Trials of the... It's not a trial of the spirit, I know that much. But they go through a trial by losing their hands. And the trial of the spirit could count as losing his father and watching his mother die. respectively for Luke and Anakin. But Rey's supposed hardships are incredibly tame in comparison during her whole journey. She doesn't suffer any physical injuries whatsoever. Her only hardship is the spirit of Leia dies. Someone she barely knew, as far as the audience is aware, is Leia, and she dies. And we don't see Rey all too broken up about it. She doesn't cry. She isn't sad. Ben dies, but he's the man who caused the deaths of millions and all of her parental figures to die. Learning that Palpatine was her grandfather also happened, but her reaction is very tame compared to Luke in Episode 5 yelling, "No! That's impossible!" So, I don't know. She had no character development, is basically my point. It's the end of the series. I'm trying to wrap up the fact that she has no character. No one has any character. The only people who have character had their character destroyed. That's the only good thing about Lando in this movie, is they don't kill him, and they don't just kill his character either. And then she ignites her pretty little golden lightsaber, and some random Tatooine lady appears and asks, or she doesn't quite ask a question first. First she's like, "No one has been here for years." And she wonders who Rey is and asks her name. I read the leaks before I saw this movie, so the second I heard this, I was like, please God, no, don't, please don't. And I could hear other people in the theater doing it too. It was almost hilarious to hear that. I wasn't the only person doing it. She stares into the distance, and she ends up seeing Leia and Luke. No Ben, by the way, who just died, which I'm pretty sure they were kind of friends, so I think he should be there. I know he was a Sith and everything, but so was Anakin. He got a Force Ghost moment. Ben, I feel like, should be here. If only because there is some weird relationship between them. I don't like it, but it exists. There's no Yoda. It's just Luke and Leia. No one else. That's it. All the Jedi talk to her, but that's just Luke and Leia. But she stares at them for a second. She turns around, and just like it was so subtly hinted at earlier, she says, Rey Skywalker. And fuck me. Why is this a part of the movie? Why was this even thought of to be a line that existed of Rey Skywalker? That's just, there's so many problems. The last line of this film. Yes, I know adoption is a fucking thing, but it's not the point. Names do have power, especially in a Star Wars universe, and a name like Skywalker does especially so. This movie was not Rise of Skywalker. The Skywalkers are all dead. The Skywalker bloodline is killed off now. Anakin's sacrifice was made meaningless thanks to this film's existence. Luke's sacrifice and journey throughout 4, 5, and 6 was meaningless. The Skywalker saga has been turned into the Palpatine saga. It's all about Palpatine and his rise and his fall. That is literally the saga now. It's about his journey to Emperor and his subsequent defeat until his granddaughter, Rey Palpatine, dethrones him. I was going to call her a Skywalker, but she's not. I hate that name with a living passion now. It's a burning hatred inside of me for that name now. And upon his death, all the Jedi and all the Skywalker are dead. The only one left, the only competent and trained Force user, is a Palpatine. Like, Palpatine fucking won at the end of this thing, I'm pretty sure. Sorry to say, but saying I am Skywalker doesn't make you one. If I decide to say I'm an Oompa Loompa, does that automatically make me one? No. That's not how it works. I cannot fully express how much this final line of the movie angered me. This is the reason I walked out of this movie hating it. This one line. If this line was just, if she said Rey Palpatine or Rey, just Rey, like signifying she doesn't need a last name, she's herself and that's all that's needed. She is a strong person. She don't need no family ties. That's all you need. I could have walked out of this movie. The life lesson was you wouldn't need a strong family. You can do things yourself. But she's a Palpatine too, so that lesson's kind of thrown down the drain pretty fast. It blows my mind that that was the last line, and it probably pissed half of the audience off too. Rey is a Palpatine. Luke didn't raise her or train her. Why is she taking the Skywalker name? Leia is known as General Organa, maybe Solo. In Legends she was known as Leia Organa Solo. She's not even a Skywalker in canon or Legends, and very few people would even know that Leia is a Skywalker, after having a kid especially, because her kid is named Solo. The fact that she's Darth Vader's daughter is probably kept pretty low-key, so is Luke being Darth Vader's son. I imagine they wouldn't broadcast that. So why the Skywalker name? Just, why? For all we know, her name is like... For all we know, Leia's name was just like in Legends. It's never exactly specified whether or not Han and Leia even got married in these films, or whether or not they broke up. She could be Leia Organa Solo, for all we know. Hell, even Ben's name is Ben Solo. Like, not only does she have no right to take the Chosen One's... Yeah, she took Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One's name, but she also had no realistic reason to do so. If anything, she should take the name Rey Palpatine, or Rey Solo, or even Rey Organa, if she really want to stretch logic, and say she loved Han Solo and Ben Solo, so... God, that fucking line. Instead of making Rey a relevant and likable character, they decided they changed her. That's all they did. They changed her name to Rey Skywalker. They used it as a plot device to make her more relevant. Names don't work like that. Rey is not the Chosen One after this movie either, and taking Anakin's name doesn't make her the Chosen One either. Lucas always did say, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, is the Chosen One. And given he is the quote-unquote, basically the godfather of Star Wars, he made it, it's his baby, I'll take his word over this disaster of a movie being the reason that the Force achieved balance, or whatever the fuck they achieved somehow. If you really wanted to have some Skywalker ending and the last line be Skywalker, leave Rey dead and have Kylo take the name. He could have had an actual arc and character development in these movies. Rey has remained exactly the same throughout all the movies and being perfectly altruistic and being never tempted to the dark side. Like, the one time she uses any anger, there's no repercussions at all. And the movie, this is the ending of the movie right here. It pisses me off. If you wanted Rise of Skywalker, just keep Ben Skywalker alive, have him abandon being Kylo Ren. He could go to fucking Tatooine and have this whole scene, and he could just say, I'm Ben Skywalker. You could have a mini scene of just Rey dying and him saying, I'm not Kylo Ren anymore. I'm Ben Skywalker. I don't deserve the name Solo anymore because of all the stuff I did. Using that instead of whatever they gave us makes this movie actually meaningful in a way. Ben Solo had a redemption arc the same way Vader did, but he didn't die at the end. It's not a carbon copy of the originals at that point. I could come up with a 2-minute better scene than this. Rey dying might actually form an actual consequence too. Like, given 2 minutes, people can come up with better plots of this movie than the actual movie decided to give us. That is the reality we live in. The last fucking line just had to go and make me want to walk out of the theater right then. Honestly, they probably did that too. That's why they made this the last line. They're like, people are gonna hate this. They're gonna walk out at the end. That way they can't get a fucking refund. I didn't try to get a refund. I don't even think they give you refunds if you attempted it. But that's not the point at all. The point is that they made this the last line of not just this movie. This is the end of the entire Skywalker saga. This is it. That is the last of everything. That is the last line we will know. The last line could have been, "May the Force be with you," to the old lady, but no, it's just, "I am Rey Skywalker," and I want to shoot myself so badly for the fact that this is a thing that exists in a movie. And then the movie comes to a close, and even the closing scene I hate, because Rey and BB-8 are just staring off to Tatooine's twin setting suns. But BB-8 isn't even hers. BB-8 is Poe's. Because Poe is always complaining that she hurts BB-8. In the very beginning of the movie, she owns the Falcon, he owns BB-8. Why does she have BB-8? Why can't this movie give me 2 seconds to not be able to criticize its logic? Like, they could have just ended the scene, they could have ended the Skywalker saga with all the friends staring off to the sun. They could have ended it with Rey, with, like, Finn yelling at her that I don't know, someone was calling for them, or they need a Jedi, or, like, all the stormtroopers are there, and they're like, "Hey, you want to train us?" Or even Poe. Poe could have been there. No, not Poe. Finn could have been there. Finn could have just been yelling at Rey, going, "Hey, I need some training. Let's go on a venture." And then that's all you would have needed. And then you could have just ended the series of them boarding the Millennium Falcon, and the scene closes when the hatch closes, and then it just cuts to black. That would have been it. You didn't need the stupid lady. She could have buried the lightsabers. You could have had Luke and Leia and Anakin and Ben all show up, and they could have all been a happy family as ghosts, and they could have just nodded at her, waved, and then she could have boarded the Falcon. That could have been it. You didn't need this bullshit. The last 5 minutes of this movie frustrated me so much, more than any other part of the movie. Just thank fucking God it's over finally. The second she said her name was Rey Skywalker, I wanted that old lady who asked her to just start screaming at her, going, "The fuck you are, bitch! I'm calling bullshit!" But she didn't. I really wished it was a scene. That should have been a deleted scene. Mark Hamill just shows up on... No, Anakin's Force Ghost just appears and starts screaming at her, going, "Bitch, you are not a Skywalker!" God, I never want to watch this movie again. It was torture.